to second. It's 1-0 Cardinals. Another bullet the other way. Ground ball towards short. Arcia can't get it. Burnison around third. He's going to score. Contreras, welcome back. An RBI single makes it 2-0. Line into right field, a base hit. Here comes Contreras. He will score. The throw cut off by Arcia. Runner is going to be in a rundown. There's going to be no play at the plate. The Cardinals just stole a run. Now race back to first, and they'll tag out Donovan. Well, it's Helsley versus Short with the game on the line, and what would you expect? A one-run game. He got him. Helsley survives the ninth, and the Cardinals win another heart-stopping win, 4-3. Your final in Game 1 tonight.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, that audio courtesy of Bally Sports Midwest as the Cardinals win another 4-3. Of course, it's a one-run game. That's the only way that the Cardinals play them lately. But they get a 4-3 victory. They have now won 4 straight games, Alex. You go back to Mother's Day. I know people on this station hate when I do this, but we're going to continue doing so because
selective from memory.
Mother's Day, and we're talking no longer a small sample size, Alex. This is 6 weeks of baseball. Cardinals have been the best team in the National League. They deserve their kudos for that, and I can feel you guys out there. I can feel it coming. Choo-choo! You can hear the train. It is starting to leave the station. And, Alex, it used to just be me. It was me and, like, 3 of our texters that go by the name Cardinals Fan 27.
Cat Dad Gamer.
Yep, those are it.
He's always on.
It was the 4 of us. We were having a great time. We were drinking some beers on there. It was just
Kool-Aid.
Budweiser for me. I know that my guy, Cat Dad Gamer, he was drinking his Mick Ultras. It was great. It was the 4 of us having a good time together. We had another one out there. It was like Gator. I think he was on there.
Gator don't play no games.
He had an NA beer. Enjoyed that, and then we had a good time together, right?
Okay, man.
Now there are so many people jumping on board. I don't even know everybody's name any longer. It's great. I enjoy watching this team play baseball right now. Dude, they stole a run. Literally stole a run yesterday. Donovan got tied up in that rundown, and they score the run that ends up being the game-winning run. Ollie said it over the weekend, and he's 100% correct. The Cardinals are playing a brand of baseball right now that appeals to this fan base. They're getting on, they're getting them over, and they're getting them in. Yesterday, it was great to see Wilson Contreras back in the lineup. Michael Ciani, hot damn, man. Tip of the cap to that gentleman, playing an unbelievable center field. Not only the catch in the first, but also the last catch that he made. I think it was 2 outs in the 9th inning. That was not an easy play. 100-mile-an-hour line drive to right center. He's able to close the gap. I don't think there are a ton of center fielders that have the speed to make it look as easy as Michael Ciani did in that spot.
Well, that first inning one didn't look easy. It looked like he pulled something.
And my takeaway from this, Alex, is I genuinely believe the Cardinals have pulled away from this mucky middle in the National League. I think they're a better team right now than Atlanta. I really do. I know that sounds crazy given preseason expectations, given the way that this team played in the first 6 weeks of the season. I think they're better. I think they're better than San Francisco. I think you're better than Cincinnati. I think you're better than Pittsburgh, Washington, Chicago. All of these teams that are kind of in this middle ground of the National League, I think the Cardinals are better than all of them, other than the current division leaders. And you can have a conversation about the Cardinals versus the Brewers. I'm not willing to have it yet because the Cardinals have not beat them enough yet. We'll talk about that in the second half of the season. But where do you stand on that, Alex? They've won 4 straight. They're playing good baseball. Do you think the Cardinals have established themselves as the best non-division leader right now in the National League?
I think they've put themselves in the conversation. I'm not ready to give that crown to them yet, even after beating the Braves once. You're right. They are better than the Braves right now because a lot of those dudes are just going through it. But big picture this season, what I do think that they have accomplished is they have separated themselves from all of these other teams that are fingers crossed, toes crossed, trying to get into the playoffs. You're better than the Mets. You're better than the Reds, the Pirates, the Cubs, the Giants. You've established that. You've pushed those teams away, and the biggest pessimist like me can say that. I think right now it's you and the Braves that are at the top of the National League. That's not a division leader. And depending on what happens in this series, you can overstep the Atlanta Braves. Now, again, big picture, I think I would give the Braves the upper hand, but I can't deny what the Cardinals have done. They've wiped the floor with all of these teams that are below them, with the exception of the Colorado Rockies and the Miami Marlins. So You've eliminated all of these teams and basically established yourself that our offense, our pitching, we are better than these teams that hope to get into the playoffs. We are going to be a team that will be in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think I'm willing to put them probably kind of second for right now. I still would be a little hesitant to put them above the Atlanta Braves, even though they played really well last night. And we'll see how
Braves
the
have
series.
Been crap for most of the season.
Yeah, well, so
that lineup stinks.
Yeah. Okay,
half the season the Cardinals have been crap too, so let's pump the brakes.
I'll pretend not
Give
to
me
look
this
at
moment,
ours.
all right?
Pre-Mother's Day they were crap. Post-Mother's Day they haven't been.
I'll pretend to not look at ours. But I do think they're probably the second best team. I'm still kind of questioning if San Diego and Arizona can finally find their footing. Problem for Arizona is their pitching's not healthy.
I'm done with them, man. I've been
When
waiting
they get
all year.
healthy. When they get healthy.
If they get their pitching healthy.
Once he gets his OPS above like 700, I'll believe in them.
Does Goldie have an OPS over 700?
No, don't worry about that.
Okay.
T-Bone, what was the argument we had yesterday? How many games below 500 the Cardinals were?
Oh, 9.
No, that's right. Yeah.
But
crap.
I think they're probably the second best team right now, and I'd hear an argument for them to be the first team. I think they're right there with the Atlanta Braves. It's just a matter of I think the Braves still have better pitching than you. And it just comes down to if their lineup starts to hit, their lineup is better than yours. Yeah. But for right now, I'd hear an argument for that top spot. I do think they are second because right now you are a better team than the San Diego Padres. Their pitching's not healthy. Same with the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Do you think their record reflects what they are?
Because
that's where they're at. They're second in the National League wild card.
I think they are the second best wild card team right now. Mm-hmm. And I know you said you're not willing to have the conversation. I think they can close the gap on the Milwaukee Brewers the way that they are playing right now because Milwaukee's injuries with their pitching staff. But I think this is where they belong right now. Second wild card that can really push the Atlanta Braves right now for that top spot if everything continues to go their way. The teams that I just don't know of behind them, because I do think Washington, Mets, Reds, Pirates, Cubs, Giants, you're better than all those teams. The two teams that I think you're ahead of right now, and we'll see when we get to post All-Star break, how their pitching looks is San Diego and Arizona. But for right now, yes, you are the second best wild card in the NL.
And the thing that I think is maybe even more important than where we specifically place them, I enjoy the brand of baseball they're playing. When I watch the Cardinals, I see what is at minimum an above average baseball team, and if you want to be confident with it, a pretty good one. A team that you can actually start to believe in. And that wasn't the case. Somebody on the text line said, BK, about a month and a half ago, you were completely out on the Cardinals. Is that just for show material? No, I was reflecting what I was watching. What we had seen prior to Mother's Day was just bad baseball. You guys saw it. You're smart fans. You know what you're watching. I remember Tim Kirkchin. This was in 2021, mid-June. The Cardinals are playing some of the worst baseball I've ever seen. And Tim Kirkchin was on the air. They were walking the world. I think they walked in a runner, and he said, Cardinals fans are smart. They know what they're watching right now. This is bad baseball. That's what we had seen for the first 39 games of the season again this year. They just weren't hitting. Nobody was hitting. And it was Goldie, it was Arenado, and everybody around them cratered simultaneously. The injuries hit, and it just was a nightmare for them. Well, starting on Mother's Day, they started hitting again. The offense that I believed in coming into the season, the reason why I thought this team could be more of a contender than many, was the diversity of skill sets in the lineup. You had guys that are right-handed that hit for contact. You had guys that are left-handed that get on base at a really high clip. You had a lefty legit power bat in Nolan Gorman. And while there have been ups and downs for all of the pieces that I just mentioned, you've seen that diversity of skill sets inside of your lineup, and what it looks like is this. This is what it was supposed to be for the Cardinals in 2024, and I think they're starting to become a team that you don't have to squint as hard to see how it works, to see how it could come together if they make the right additions at the deadline and if they get healthy enough prior to the trade deadline.
And you know how I know we're at that point is because we're talking about what their biggest need is as starting pitching, which we thought coming into the season.
Exactly.
When we came into the season, we thought the biggest hole was going to be the starting rotation. And it's a hole. I don't think it's as big as I thought it was going to be when the season started. But early on, it was, wow, they need 9 hitters because they have no way that's hitting. Now you, to your point, are starting to see what the lineup can look like when it starts to get healthier. And when you have Contreras back in it, hitting in that 3 spot, now you've got that 1, 2, 3 of Winn, Burley, and Contreras. Now you're back to where the conversation should be, which is how do you go out and find a starter for the postseason push?
By the way, if you go back to May 12th, here are the players in your lineup that are above league average offensively. Just there's a wide gap between some of these, but above league average offensively. Some of these guys, it's a small sample size, understandably. Lars Nootbaar, Brandon Crawford, he's 55% above league average since May 12th.
Stud.
Brendan Donovan, Alec Burleson, Masyn Winn, Paul Goldschmidt, who's been 25% above league average, by the way, since Mother's Day. So this is now 165 plate appearances with an OPS of 785. All right, Goldie. All right. Ivan Herrera and Nolan Gorman. Nolan Arenado is 10% below league average offensively in this stretch of games. And that's pretty much all of your regulars that are now above league average offensively. That's the offense that I thought they would have. I thought they would have a bunch of dudes that are between solid and really, really good offensively. And when you have that many players in your lineup that are above league average, it looks like a lot of fun. And when you're playing the way they have with the base running as well and playing solid defense, yeah, this is starting to look a little bit more representative of what their talent was supposed to be.
Again, the part that I think I'm most surprised by is the fact that we're talking about this team being entertaining and exciting and the brand that they're playing, and you had to get 5 names down that list before you mentioned one of the big hitters in your lineup. Like, again, last night, you didn't have Goldschmidt or Arenado in the lineup. And
I liked it.
And who came away with the big hits for you? Brendan Donovan, Alec Burleson, Wilson Contreras. Like, you have now established, and this is the part that T-Bone and I doubted for the longest time. I didn't think you could win without Goldschmidt or Arenado.
I think you can.
You are now establishing that you can. Now, you're going a lot of ifs, though. Nolan Gorman has to not be in a hot streak. You have to make sure that you're healthy, and you have to make sure that you keep Masyn Winn and Alec Burleson and Brendan Donovan going, because we saw when Donovan got into his cold spell, offense trickled a little bit. When Burleson wasn't hitting at the beginning of the season, we were talking about this. You've got to keep 3 guys that I didn't think were going to be this good, consistent, and you have to get Nolan Gorman out of your cold spell, but that's how you win without Goldschmidt and Arenado.
I think you just need 3 guys hitting well at any given time. Just 3 guys to be hot. And when you have, on any given day, 8 players in your lineup that you feel pretty good about, you should always have 3 of them that are hitting at a decent level. And at the beginning of the season, I thought it was almost a necessity that at least 1, maybe 2 of them had to be coming from the Arenado, Contreras, Goldie group. I don't know if that's the case any longer. I'm not sure those are your 3 highest ceiling players anymore. I think that's probably what's changed from where I was at the beginning of the year to where we are now. Based on history, they're absolutely your 3 highest ceiling players in the lineup. I think Gorman might have a higher ceiling this year than Nolan Arenado. He has a lower floor, maybe, but he has a higher ceiling. And what that means is on any given 2-week stretch, Nolan Gorman can carry this lineup. I don't know if Nolan Arenado has that capacity anymore in his bat. He can be a really good defender for you. We've seen that at times. He's been a really good defender for the Cardinals this season. I don't know if the bat still plays that way. Alec Burleson can legitimately carry this lineup for a week at a time. Brendan Donovan, we've been seeing it lately, can carry this lineup. So some of those left-handed bats that they were hesitant to give up on in the offseason, you're seeing why right now, because they all have that kind of ability to be able to carry the lineup for an extended stretch. I didn't mind seeing them yesterday. I kind of enjoyed watching them yesterday with the young guys in the lineup primarily, and with Nolan Arenado, no Paul Goldschmidt. I think we should see more of that with specifically when they get healthy. Alec Burleson at first base, no problem with it whatsoever. If it gets Goldie a day off, if it keeps him fresh, hopefully he keeps hitting the way that he has now since Mother's Day, great. And I think there's going to come a point in time where maybe you have some more days built off for Nolan Arenado as well. Be interested to see what that looks like, especially if Brendan Donovan keeps hitting. And you've got new options that are emerging from the outfield sooner rather than later. Edman's taking BP.
Donovan, get Crawford in there.
Newbar getting BP.
Yeah. Crawford's playing over all of these guys.
Sounds like both are heading on a rehab assignment sooner rather than later. Choo-choo! I can feel it. I can feel the good vibes over here.
Give me the conductor hat.
No, you don't feel it yet.
Give it to me.
I'm not allowing you to do that. You don't feel it just yet.
Give me the damn hat.
I will.
I am saying I feel it.
I'm telling you.
You're hungry, man.
I will let you wear the hat when I feel like you're ready for it.
First of all, this is a shtick. I had a plan. Give me the damn hat so I can do what I was planning to do.
There you go, Alex.
All right, throw it away.
YouTube.com/101ESPN STL. Yeah, okay. Good shtick.
He just ruined the shtick, man.
That wasn't very good anyways.
I thought it was pretty good because that's where I'm at right now.
Throw the hat on the ground.
No.
I mostly threw it on the ground because BK paid for it.
All right, that's Alex Ferrario. He's Tanner Hendrickson, and I'm Brandon Kiley. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN at 11:45. We'll get to questions and answers. So if you guys have any, get them in right now on the Air Comfort Service text line at 314-399-9646. The YouTube chat, youtube.com/101 ESPN STL is where you go to find it. It is the graveyard over there, and it is off and running this morning. Coming up next, yesterday, they did it. They found a way. The Florida Panthers are Stanley Cup champions. What can other teams learn from the way that they were constructed? Alex is a big takeaway from their roster next year on 101 ESPN. That's what it sounded like last night on ESPN. What a call. What a final call for the Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. We got to be better than that. I'm sorry, man. This is a champion. I think he's a pretty good broadcaster, generally speaking. These Stanley Cup finals have not exactly been a masterclass, in my opinion, by ESPN when it comes to the broadcasting side of things.
Yeah, they've missed out. I mean, the TNT should have been the one that is a part of this one. I like Ray Ferraro.
I think Rasmussen is just a better.
Yeah, I love Ray Ferraro. I think Ferraro is an awesome one to have on the sideline.
Great.
Yeah, I
he
love
really
Ferraro.
shined during this postseason. I thought he was honest too. There were moments where he was like, "This guy is." That was Bouchard. I think had a really bad play in Game 5 or 6. He's like, "That can't happen in that moment. You cannot have that kind of."
I think your two best sidelines in hockey are Ray Ferraro and Darren Pang, and so like you got that part of it. But you're right. The play-by-play, I do think Bob Wischusen is much better in that position, but TNT was the one that felt like they should have had this one.
That being said, the story from last night was not the broadcast, unless you're in our positions, in which case it kind of does become the story. But it was the Carolina Panthers. It was the Florida Panthers winning the Stanley Cup. Alex, it took a little longer than certainly they were hoping for, but they find a way to get it done in Game 7 at home on their home ice. Bobrovsky was amazing last night. Barkov was fantastic once again. And they just held on. They held on for dear life for the final 10 minutes. I think it was Paul Maurice who said post-game, hey, we just came up with a new strategy of icing the puck as many times as humanly possible, and it found a way to work for us down the stretch there. What was your biggest takeaway, Alex, from the Panthers finding a way to hold on and win this cup, and just the way that they were able to build this roster to get to the mountaintop?
Yeah, I think they did it really different than other teams do. Like, of course, they have their superstars. You've got Barkov, you've got Matthew Tkachuk, and even Aaron Ekblad. This one's going to be in a different category because they drafted him first overall. But Florida built this roster with a ton of dudes that other teams didn't want. And like as I'm watching these guys hand the Stanley Cup off to each other last night, it goes from Barkov to Sergei Bobrovsky. Okay, that's a dude that got moved on from because he had a massive contract that nobody wanted. And Florida was like, we'll take it. We'll do it. He had the contract with the Columbus Blue Jackets. It was like, yeah, we'll take him. And we'll deal with the $10 million. And look at what it just got. And then you're looking at the forward position. Sam Bennett traded away from Calgary. Carter Verhaeghe traded away from Tampa. Sam Reinhart traded away from Buffalo. Vladimir Tarasenko not wanted where he was. And then on the defense, Gustav Forsling was moved through waivers to 2 separate teams before he was claimed by the Florida Panthers, and he was their number 1 defenseman. He was playing top minutes for them. Brandon Montour was traded for a 3rd-round draft pick. Oliver Ekman-Larsson was basically like, get this guy out of here. This was a group of players, and I know we label the Vegas Golden Knights run that they had their first year as a group of rejects. It kind of felt like what Florida was. They were a ton of dudes that other teams said, no, we're not willing to pay them the money that they're worth. We don't want them. We can't win with them. And they combined for a group that felt unstoppable.
I like the way that they built their roster because they had a very clear end point in mind. Like it felt like every move was made with, this is the brand of hockey that we're going to play. How does this player get us closer to playing that style of hockey? And for every single move that they made, including the biggest one, of course, which was trading for Matthew Tkachuk, that was the goal in mind, man. Like, you think about the way that Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar play. Well, it's very much a rush-oriented style, right? It's let's go score as many points as humanly possible. And it worked. They got to a President's Trophy with those guys being top pair defensemen and the leading scorer on the roster. And then they went into the offseason and said, this isn't good enough. We just got swept out of the playoffs in the 2nd round against the Tampa Bay Lightning, and we have to build more like Tampa Bay has. And the way to do that is by trading 2 of our best players to Calgary for Matthew Tkachuk. We are all in on Matthew Tkachuk, his brand of hockey, what that looks like. And what we've seen over the last couple of years is a manifestation of what their plan was from basically day one. So they go out, they get guys like Sam Bennett, who plays that style. They go out and add a bunch of the defensemen that are big, strong, have the length that you would expect when you're playing this style of hockey. And then they go out and add the other pieces as well that can be next to those big, strong, physical styles of player. So you get a Carter Verhaeghe when he is a lesser-known asset after year 1 with Tampa Bay. You go get a Sam Reinhart, who maybe isn't the biggest guy in the world, the most physical guy in the world, but he's a hell of a hockey player, and he's going to put up points for you, which you need when you're playing this brand of hockey. So They just had all of the right pieces in place, man. And it all came from, this is our identity. This is who we're going to be as a team. How do we get to the best version of that? And every player that they added had that in the back of their mind as to how they fit into that style of a team.
Yeah. You build it with physicality, and I know that's what everybody goes to. And frankly, Florida got away from the physicality for those 3 games that Edmonton brought themselves back into the conversation. But you do it from commitment with the entire group. And when Paul Maurice was talking with Emily Kaplan yesterday, and she asked him what was special about the group, he said, when I signed the contract with the Florida Panthers, he said, I looked at my wife and talked about how this group just feels different. They're willing to do whatever you ask. And I believe that was one of the quotes in the Athletic article of saying, like, be careful what you tell them to do because they will do it. That's not an easy thing to do where you have 12 guys at the forward position, 6 on defense, and 2 goaltenders that are willing to commit to whatever style of play that the coach is asking. But again, I think it means something when you get a ton of dudes who were elsewhere that were playing a style that the other team didn't deem successful, and they go somewhere else that says, we can make you a winning player. And when you have a lot of those guys on the ice together, it feels like it's a group committee on the ice. And from start to finish, that's how they beat teams. I mean, I went back and looked at it. The top line for the Tampa Bay Lightning, for the Boston Bruins, for the New York Rangers, and then now the Edmonton Oilers, with the exception of Edmonton, the top line put up less than 5 points combined at even strength. And against the Florida Panthers. That is not an easy thing to do when you're talking about Stanley Cup playoffs. That's Barkov, but that's Reinhart too, and that's Carter Verhaeghe. That's 2 dudes that were top-line players elsewhere that the teams are like, nope, don't think so.
And this is the other thing that it comes back to is leadership, right? Like, how do you get to a place where everybody falls in line? Well, it's leadership. It starts with the captain. Barkov is the guy in every sense of the word there in Florida. And then you look at the coach. And I'm kind of on Team T-Bone on this one. Like, I think coaches in the NHL, generally speaking, do they have the same value as coaches in, like, the NFL? No, I don't think so. I do think there are some that matter, though. I think there are some that can get more buy-in than others. And if you get the timing right and you bring in the coach at the pinnacle, right, when you're ready to get closer to the mountaintop, you can get a coach that comes in and you've got the players ready to go, ready to buy into whatever it is that they're selling. And that was the case for Paul Maurice. He comes in and they're already ready to go. They've got Matthew Tkachuk in place. Let's go. From here, we know who we are as a team. We are ready to win. And they bought into everything that Paul Maurice was selling. They get so close last year, fell just short of it, and find a way to get over the top this season. That's the value of leadership, is getting the buy-in from everybody, top to bottom. I mean, you hear guys like Evan Rodriguez last night, right, who is a supplementary piece to what they're trying to accomplish, and he loved playing with that roster this year. I heard Paul Maurice talking about Vladimir Tarasenko yesterday after the game. He was like, Vladdy comes in and is immediately like, what do I need to do? How do you want to use me? And he fits right into what they're trying to accomplish. That wasn't always the case with Vladimir Tarasenko, man. You got to get buy-in from that dude. And they did. They found a way to do it. So kudos to them. I loved the way that they built their roster. It took a whole hell of a lot of gumption to make the kinds of moves that they did, but they believed in every single one of them, and they ended up getting a Stanley Cup because of it, and that is what all of this is supposed to be about. And so every move that they made at this point, you look back on it, that's a win. It's a win because they were able to hoist the Stanley Cup above their heads. Alex, when you look at the way that these teams are now constructed for the future, though, who do you think is going to have a tougher time getting back here? Because getting one is hard. Getting two, getting back to another is damn near impossible in this sport.
Yeah.
Who's going to have a tougher time getting back?
I mean, I think a lot of people will say Florida because that's such a grueling thing to do, to win a Stanley Cup final in back-to-back seasons where you were in the Stanley Cup final the year prior, to do it for another year. I think it's Edmonton. Edmonton, even Leon Draisaitl was talking about this last night. Like, it was tough to listen to, but he was like, this sucks because you were one shot away, one goal away from doing something that we were believing we could accomplish, and now you have to go through an 82-game schedule and 4 rounds to get back to this point. They've got 12 guys or 10 guys locked up, and they have math. They've got 12 guys locked up and $10 million left to go in their cap space for next year. And Leon Draisaitl is going to get a raise after next season. So they are going to have a tough time because this roster that they have, you're not going to be able to replicate it. You have some of the pieces that are going to be there. You still got your goalie. You've got your top 4 defense. You've got maybe 5, 6 guys in your top 9, but you're not going to be able to add depth. And to rely on your 4 or 5 best players for another 82 game plus, that's going to be near impossible to do. So I think Edmonton's going to have a very tough time. This felt like it was their year to get it done, and if not, they're going to have a tough time getting back there.
Dude, I remember somebody was talking about this when it came to the NBA the other day. Like, your window ends so much closer or so much sooner than what you expect it to. Like, sometimes you get close and you're like, oh, that's okay, we'll get back, right? We'll get back. No, sometimes it's just over. Like, think about the Cardinals window with Goldie and Arenado, right? We've seen this over the last couple of seasons, and listen, like, they were not some juggernaut last year by any stretch of the imagination, but I think we all felt going into the offseason like you'll get a better version of Goldie and Arenado next year. Even if it's not MVP levels, you get a better version than what you saw last year. And sometimes you just don't. Like, sometimes that's just the best it's ever going to be. The overwhelming likelihood, and this is crazy to say, but it's true, the overwhelming likelihood is that's the best it's ever going to be for this version of the Edmonton Oilers. Yep. And now you go into next season and you've got $21 million contributed towards Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and it just makes it hard to build around them. And you finally did. This year, I thought they built a really good roster, man.
Yeah, I'd agree.
You look at what they had defensively, that is much better than what they've been previously. Skinner, for all of his faults, is a solid goalie, and they got good enough performances out of him. And I don't think I've ever seen a better version of Connor McDavid than what you saw this offseason or this season. And oh, by the way, Leon Draisaitl is making $8.5 million, which is one of the best bang for your buck bargains in all of hockey.
Yep.
It ain't getting easier from here because McDavid has 2 years left. Draisaitl has 1 year left. It continues to be increasingly difficult to get back to where you just were. And the Western Conference should get better around you. This year was a down year in the West.
I mean, if you're Leon Draisaitl, you're going to be looking at $12 to $13 million for this next contract. And if you're Connor McDavid, you're getting 14 plus. So obviously the cap is moving up, but you're going to have $27+ million tied up into your 2 best players, which means you're not going to be able to rely on some of those mid salaries. It's going to have to be high end, and then it's going to have to be entry-level contracts. And, oh, by the way, you don't have a first-round pick.
As of today, current Vegas odds to win the Cup next year, Florida is, as expected, the favorite at 9-1. Carolina and Colorado at 9.5-1. Dallas and Edmonton are 10-1 currently. Vegas is 11-1. The Rangers and the Devils are both 13-1. Toronto at 14-1. Might be an interesting one. The Kings, Vancouver, and Tampa Bay are all 18-1. Winnipeg, 21-1. Boston is 23-1. And your St. Louis Blues, 42-1.
There's a value.
There's those odds right there. That's the odds.
Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll get to questions and answers. But next, time for some NFL quick hitters here on 101 ESPN. With Alex Ferrario, I'm Brandon Kiley for our friends over at Circa Sports in Illinois. Alex, if you're placing a futures bet today to win the pennant, the place to do so is over on the Circa Sports app in the state of Illinois. You look at the National League, the top 3 contenders in the NL, according to the Vegas books right now, Dodgers, Phillies, and Braves. I'm comparing what the odds are to bet on any of those 3 on Circa versus FanDuel, for example. It's always better odds over on Circa. Dodgers plus 185 versus plus 165. Phillies plus 265 versus plus 230. Braves 5-1 versus 4.5-1. If I'm betting money on a team to win the National League or the American League, the Yankees, for example, plus 225 over on Circa, plus 200 on FanDuel. I'm winning more money by betting with Circa.
This is why you need to do those future bets over on Circa. You don't get limited based off of your winnings, or maybe it's just those simple money line splits. Like BK just told you, you are always going to get better splits with Circa Sports. So make sure you check them out, download, put some money into it today. It's the app that BK and I only use. If you or someone you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234.
Tara Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Cardinals beat the Braves last night 4-3 as they take Game 1 of the 3-game set. Game 2 is tonight, 6:45 will be first pitch. Ronaldo Lopez will get the start for Atlanta, and Kyle Gibson will be on the mound for the St. Louis Cardinals. The Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
All right, let's dive into some NFL quick hitters. Alex, earlier today, ESPN put out their ranking of the 2024 NFL rosters across the league. It's 1 through 32. I'm curious who you think is most likely to jump into the top 5 after this season. Their current top 5. Number 1, the San Francisco 49ers. At number 2, of course, the Kansas City Chiefs. Number 3, the Ravens. Number 4, the New York Jets. And at number 5, they have the Detroit Lions.
I was wondering where they were.
If you were to guess, Alex, who do you think when we do this next year? Because at this point last year, I'm not sure the Lions would have been in the top 5. If we did this again next year, who do you think is going to jump into the top 5 by the end of this
This one's
season?
simple for me, the Texans.
I like that. They're at number 8 right now.
Are they? Yeah. So I think with that offense and with their defense emerging from what they did last year with D'Amico Ryans, that one feels like it's an easy top 5 by next year. I'm surprised the Bengals weren't on that. I guess because of their injuries?
In the top 10. They were at number, I think their defense is really
I guess that's
them down.
true.
Number 7 is where they're at.
Yeah.
The biggest question for them is running back. I would also add, I think they have serious questions on the defensive side of the ball, man. They were bad on that side last year, and they lost a few guys as well.
Yeah. But that's mine, though, Texans.
I like that one. Can I give you one that might be a little surprising to you guys?
The
Is it in the
Rams.
AFC or NFC?
NFC.
I've got one in the NFC as well. I wonder if it's the same.
Are they in the South?
Nope.
Oh. Mine's the Atlanta Falcons.
I like that.
I wonder if now that you finally got a quarterback in Kirk Cousins,
2 of them.
you can, and Michael Penix.
They're 19 on this list.
That makes sense.
That feels pretty low.
It feels low, but I can understand how you get there, at least offensively, because Kyle Pitts hasn't reached his potential. Drake London hasn't really reached his potential.
And you really don't know what you got in your quarterback.
Yeah, and you don't know what you have in Bijan Robinson as well, and Cousins coming off an injury. But their defense was solid last year. It's been solid really the last 2 years. If now you get that quarterback in Kirk Cousins that's healthy, plays at the level that you expect from him, it's going to lift all those other weapons around him. I think Atlanta could be a surprise dark horse to get into this conversation next year.
I like that a lot. I do think they have some serious questions on the edge. Like, they just have no pass rush coming off of the edge. But they would be a team that I would definitely have under consideration. They didn't immediately come to mind for me, but I like it. I think the Bears are another one that I would throw into this conversation. But the one that I circled was the Green Bay Packers.
I should have known.
I wonder if last year was the start of what's going to be just, hey, the Packers are back to being what they were early on in Rodgers' career. It's going to be tough because one of the downsides of taking your quarterback when you already have one under contract, Falcons, is that you immediately have to make a decision on him. Jordan Love's probably getting a $60 million per year contract, guys. That's probably coming prior to the start of the season. And it won't kick in for a couple of years because he's got that 2-year bridge deal, basically, that they signed last offseason. But Jordan Love's going to get big time paid, and that's going to make it hard to really do what the Texans are able to do, for example, where they're just bringing in a bunch of veterans to maximize their current window with C.J. Stroud on his rookie contract. That team's good, man. The Packers have serious talent. I feel like they have like 10 different former first-round picks on their defense right now. They were able to make do with their wide receivers, which have almost no top picks there last year. I think the Packers might end up this season being a top 5 to 7 roster in the NFL, depending on how things go for them.
I could see it. I'm just not as high on Jordan Love.
Yeah, I don't buy it.
Really?
Yeah,
Even after last year?
I thought he was good. I don't know if he's going to creep into the... I feel like he's a middle-tier quarterback. And if he doesn't get into the top 10 as a top 10 quarterback, even like maybe fringe top 7, I don't know if you can lift that roster up to be in the top 5 conversation.
And
I just don't know about their weapons around him.
Yeah, I think
that's fair.
I think it hurts that they lost Aaron Jones. I know they got Josh Jacobs, but I think it hurts they lost Aaron Jones.
Aaron Jones was really good for them in the playoffs last year.
Where'd Jones go
a big
again?
part of it.
Jones is Minnesota.
That's right. That's right.
I think that's a good pickup by Minnesota.
I do too.
I think he's
I love
always
Aaron
been
Jones.
underrated, but I like Josh Jacobs too. I just don't think he does as much for you in the passing game, so it's something worth consideration. All right, they're bottom 5 rosters in the NFL right now.
Carolina Hurricanes. Because it said Panthers the other one. Come on, guys. This is a joke that carries over.
Carolina does it. It's the whole thing. You know.
Okay, bottom 5 rosters in National Football League.
Number 32,
Carolina Panthers.
the New York Giants.
Oh, that makes
Wow.
sense.
Yeah.
Over the Panthers?
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Wow. I disagree with that one. And I know the Giants don't have anything, but the Panthers...
Would you believe me if I said the Panthers aren't a bottom 3 roster?
No, and this list is a joke to me then. This list is a joke to me.
31, Denver Broncos.
That checks out.
That one checks out.
30, Washington.
Okay.
I would put Carolina below
I'm a little surprised by
Washington.
that because they've got some okay weapons on offense.
29, Carolina.
No.
And 28, Arizona. I think their roster is not very good, but also they were so feisty last year. I kind of like Carolina.
How did the Patriots not make the bottom 5?
They're 27, so they're
My
Okay.
bottom 3 would be Carolina, the Giants. I think I would put New England in the bottom 3.
Yeah,
They're not very good.
Those would be my bottom 3. But Carolina by far is the worst.
Yeah, I would have Carolina probably at... I'd have New England
The
at the
Broncos
bottom.
roster is bad.
I get
Yeah.
it, but who does Carolina have to get excited about?
Their defense, I
Bryce
think, is
Young?
better than what people are.
Did you see
Giving them
Bryce
credit
Young?
for.
At least if I'm the Denver Broncos, I have an unknown quarterback that nobody knows
I
about.
got the Red Rifle Andy Dalton as well.
I do not like the Panthers' offense literally anywhere. I don't like their weapons. I don't like their running backs. I don't like their quarterback. He is T-bone size, and I don't like their offensive line. I do, however, think that they have some talent on the defensive side of the ball. I think they've got a few legitimate pieces on that side, so that would be where I have them kind of
Defense doesn't win championships.
overtaking the Broncos. The Broncos have nothing, dude. They've got Pat Surtain. Love him. He's great. Anything else? Like anything else that you're super excited about with the Broncos right now?
Where did they have the Chargers on this list? Were they like bottom 10? Because the Chargers are a team that like outside
24.
of Herbert. Yeah. I was going to say outside of Herbert, and then I guess they've got some pieces on the defensive end, or at least at edge. But, man, it's hard to look at that Chargers roster compared to, like, 3 years ago where it was like, wow, this team could take the next step. And now you look at it and go, whew, poor Justin Herbert's going to be there for a while, and they're not going to be very good.
I think the Chargers are right now where the Blues are, basically, where they're like competitive rebuild. We've got the quarterback, we've got the coach, we've got the two most important things. Now we're going to build around them. I mean, they sent all of their receivers away.
Yeah.
Mike Williams, it was smart to move on. He's just never healthy. Keenan Allen, you were able to get a little something back in return. Cool, move on from him. He's getting up there in age. He's always hurt at this point in his career. Go ahead and start over. And that's what they're doing this offseason. I take your medicine. I think they're probably going to be without both Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa after this year. See if you can win 10 games this year because you've got Jim Harbaugh, run the ball a ton. And then next year, you really try to start building it up again. But I think that's where they're at right now. Tennessee, by the way, at number 25. Kind of falling for Tennessee right now.
Yeah, I say that feels a little low for the Titans.
I was confused by their offseason at the beginning of the offseason when they started adding all of these veterans. And then you see it at the end, you're like, man,
who's the top wideout they have?
I kind of like all the guys that they have now. They've got Hopkins, Ridley, and Tyler Boyd now as their top three receivers. A little old,
Who's
but
their quarterback?
Will Levis.
Oh, okay.
They've got Tony Pollard now. I like that.
Ooh, there's a reason Dallas was like, no, we're good.
Jeffrey Simmons defensively.
They added some pieces on the defensive side of the
got
ball.
L'Jarius Sneed now. Roger McCreary's a really
also
good
lost
corner. Chidobe Awuzie. I like Monty Hooker. I don't know, man. I think that's a 9-win team. That's a frisky 9 wins. And if something goes their way and Will Levis is a little better than expected, they could win 10.
They also lost out on the coach that was making them so successful, too.
Who's their coach now?
They've got the best offensive line coach in the NFL now, though.
Oh, good.
Callahan.
Oh, that's their head coach is Callahan.
Their head coach is Callahan, and his dad is the offensive line coach.
Oh, that's going to go well. Father-son duo, huh?
He is amazing. He's an unbelievable offensive line coach. So
I'll
believe
I think
when
the
I see
Titans
it.
will be better than people expect.
I would have had that roster like 15. I would have gone maybe a little higher than that, like 15 to 20 range would have probably been where I would have put them.
I definitely think they're a better roster than the Saints, for example. And the Saints are at 20. I would probably have them above the Steelers. I would have them in that, probably right behind the Bears. I'd probably be right around 18 or so.
Where do they finish going into next year, their roster?
Bears? Mm-hmm. Top 10.
I was going to say, they got to be top 10, because they were another one I was like, do they get to top 5? They don't get to top 5, but top 10 if Caleb Williams is the real deal.
Offensive line's passable. Wide receivers should be really good. I think they...
Defensively, you got to upgrade, but...
I wish they didn't sign DeAndre Swift to that big contract, but whatever. And I think their quarterback's going to be really, really good. I just think it's going to take a year for him to kind of transition to the NFL level. But I think they're going to be a really good team, man, down the road. He's Alex, this T-Bone on BK. NFC North is going to be amazing. Amazing theater to watch for the next 5 years or so. Questions and answers coming up next year on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends over at Classic Air Care, who have been making people comfortable since 1926. You've heard me talk a lot about being a part of their maintenance program and how great customer service they have. Well, I lived it this weekend once again because my AC unit went out, and of course, what a perfect time to do so. But what I love about Classic Air Care is how quick they are to respond. They were out there Monday morning to check out my unit, to get it up and running for me, just to get through, because we are going to have to purchase a new HVAC system. But that's also why I love Classic Air Care, because when Mike was out there for me, he walked us through the entire process, explained what we need, what you don't need. That's just the bells and whistles. And he went us through the financing options that are available for you through Classic Air Care at 0% at 18 months. I loved everything about working with Classic Air Care for the last few years, and now going through this process of getting an HVAC system. If you don't believe me, check out the hundreds of reviews that are up on Google Reviews. It's a 4.8 rating. Check them out online. Tell them Alex Ferrario sent you. It's Classic Air Care and ClassicAirCare.com.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers from the 618. Alex, why has there been zero NHL trade rumors right now?
There have been. I feel like there's been trade rumors for the last 2 weeks because
We've already seen two goalies that have been dealt.
general managers are like, I'm not waiting anymore for this. This is stupid.
Pierre-Luc Dubois has been traded. So those are three legitimately big trades that have already been accomplished, all of which were done prior to the end of the Stanley Cup final. So you'll see more over the next few days.
More start up when all the GMs get to the same city. When they get to Vegas, probably I think typically they get there tomorrow or maybe Thursday. Once they all get to the same city, that's when you start to see the deals. And then the rumors really start up once the draft starts. T-Bone and I saw it firsthand last year. Like, guys aren't the general managers aren't even sitting at their tables during the draft. They're walking around talking to everybody. So that's when the rumors really start.
I can't tell you how many times I lost Army last year.
Yeah, we couldn't keep track of them. But we were thinking the trade was going to happen. Let's get more coffee.
The other thing about timing on a lot of this stuff, July 1st is the date. That's the date that really matters. And it's not just because that's when free agency begins, but that's when a lot of no trade clauses kick in.
And signing bonuses kick in.
And that's the date that a lot of these teams will be targeting. So over the next 5 days, I think you're going to see a lot of rumors that start to emerge, especially over the next few. When is the draft officially out? Friday?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Friday, Saturday.
So I would say Wednesday, Thursday, you'll really start to see things heat up. As people stop with the coverage of the Stanley Cup final starting tomorrow, I'm sure a lot of the national guys will be calling around saying, hey, what are you hearing? What's out there? What's going on? And then leading into Thursday, you'll hear a bunch of those rumors. And then Friday, of course, stuff will actually take.
Yeah, this is the buildup. This is where you start to hear the rumors of guys willing to sign extensions or not willing to sign extensions. And then that's what leads you to the draft. And then, of course, the July 1st.
If Blues' perspective on this, if Booch gets traded, do you think it's during the draft or do you think that happens closer to free agency?
Probably free agency because I don't think they're going to trade Booch for a draft pick. And it sounds like they're still in the negotiation. And you can't negotiate term until July 1st with Booch. So they can't really get into term until July 1st. So wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So yeah, I would say you're looking probably July 1st or beyond.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 636. Guys, what do you think of the Illini basketball team having one of the best off seasons they've ever had? T-Bone, your boy's got a 5-star?
Yeah.
Guy that's reclassifying from the 25 class to the 24 class?
Right under the wood, knows what he's doing, man.
Right.
He's keeping this thing going. And he clearly has. I remember last year you sent me a piece from The Athletic. I think it was like right around the tournament. Where Underwood said, you know what? We're just going to go get a bunch of wings. Yep. We're going to be really big, and we're going to be just a hassle to play.
That's what Boston did,
and that's exactly what he's done again this offseason, too. If you look at the roster, I think every guy that he's brought in transfer, and even the kid they just got that 5-star, are like 6'6 plus and have lengthy-looking wingspans, and they got some shooters as well. They're going to be another menace to deal with again this year, I believe.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Guys, who is the player that you are most excited to be dealt at the deadline? Who's the guy that is the most intriguing to you? Not necessarily for the Cardinals, just baseball-wise.
There's two of them with the White Sox. I'm intrigued with Crochet and Luis Robert Jr. I like Luis Robert Jr. I understand the concern because he has been injured and you only had one really good season. But that one really good season, we're talking about almost 50 home runs. I'm very interested to see if somebody strikes a massive deal for those two players because I think those two are difference makers.
My prediction is this is going to be a dud of a deadline.
I kind of feel that way, too.
I don't think there are going to be very many. Like, remember a couple of years ago when it was Scherzer and Verlander that were dealt? Yeah. And it was like, holy
Soto
cow.
a couple of years ago.
Yeah. I don't think you're going to end up with a name like that. I think what's going to happen is the team everybody's going to focus on is the Blue Jays. And it'll be similar to the Cardinals last year, where the Cardinals were the big surprise. They stink. Everybody knows it. And everybody knew they were going to be sellers. So people were like, oh, do they trade Goldie? Do they trade Arenado? Look at all of these pieces they could deal. Maybe they get in on a big starter and they trade some of their young position players. And what typically ends up happening is they end up trading their pending free agents. And I think that's what's going to happen with the Blue Jays this year. I think people are going to talk about Guerrero and Bichette. Do they trade some of these young star position players that they've been building around? And they're not going to. They're going to trade their pending free agents. So if I was to answer directly, though, on
Killington over here,
who I think is most intriguing going into the deadline, it is probably Crochet. I don't think he gets dealt, though. I think the White Sox ultimately decide we think we will get better offers from contenders who have players from their current big league roster that we would like to have as part of our roster for the future, and that'll happen in the offseason. So I think they wait until he gets traded in the offseason.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think it's going to be a bit of a dud of a deadline. One guy I would keep an eye on because it's such their style of move, but it's probably more in the offseason, is Randy Arozarena. Now, I think his value seems to be lower because he hasn't played as well this year. But he's a guy that I could see a contender trying to lure away from the Tampa Bay Rays because that's the kind of trade that they would make. At some point, they're going to deal him. If he starts hitting, maybe you could see him being dealt at the deadline, but I'm kind of with you. I think it's going to be a bit of a dud.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Another guy to watch from that team is Zach Eflin, but is Zach Eflin really getting anybody excited? Probably not. He's got 1 year left on his contract at $18 million. This is the exact time where they would probably try to trade him. If they don't now, they will in the offseason. It's just not a whole lot out there, man. Not a whole lot out there. I think what you want to see probably if you're a baseball fan, if you really want to see some fireworks at this year's deadline, I would root for the Tigers to just fall completely out of it. They've got a few guys that maybe would be of interest to other teams. I think you really want the Mets to completely fall out of it. That would be another team that has some pieces. And then I would say the Giants, because of what they have pitching-wise. If they end up potentially falling out of this thing, they get a couple of guys back at the from the injured list, they could be a team that sells a little bit too.
I'm fascinated to know what happens if the Astros and the Rangers can't get back into it. Because both the Astros, I mean, you mentioned the Verlander-Scherzer trade. Yeah. Guess who's got 1 year left on both their deals? Verlander and Scherzer. Now, Scherzer just made his first start of the season, I think on Sunday or Monday, whatever day it is. But those guys are interesting, and Houston's fascinating to see what they do because I think Valdez has another year of control left after this year. They've got some pieces that they can move.
Bregman.
Tucker's a free agent in a year or two. Bregman's a free agent at the end of the year. You want some fireworks. The team to probably root for is the Astros to just kind of go through a fire sale.
Remember last year how we said, what changed for the Texas Rangers? And the answer was, well, Marcus Semien and Corey Seager were awesome.
Let me guess, they're not awesome anymore?
Marcus Semien's batting .250 with an OPS of 720. Corey Seager has been good, but batting .250 with an OPS of 780. It's like Brendan Donovan. They've got Brendan Donovan and who on the Cardinals would have a 730 OPS right now? Somebody kind of in the middle.
Newbar?
It's like Ivan Herrera.
Herrera. Yeah,
that's what they have right now in their lineup with those two guys. That's the difference. So turns out the big guys need to hit for you to be the best version of yourself. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Jeremy Rutherford joins us next here on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK for my friends over at Victory Men's Health. If you wake up in the morning and you say to yourself, man, I don't have the same energy as I once did. You get to your workout, you get about halfway through it, you're like, I don't feel like I'm getting the same results that I once did. I don't feel like I'm getting through this the way that I once did. It is time to unlock your inner champion, and the place to do that is at Victory Men's Health. If you check them out today, they've got 4 great locations across the St. Louis area, and you can book online, victorymenshealth.com. That's victorymenshealth.com. It's super easy. You'll put in your name, email, phone number, tell them a little bit about what you're trying to get accomplished, and they'll get right back with you to schedule that appointment as soon as humanly possible. I did exactly that about 2 weeks ago. Went in, first appointment is to get your blood drawn. They will find out exactly where your micronutrient levels are and where your testosterone is, and they'll have you back and they'll get you a consult. And when you go in there for that one, it'll put together an individualized plan for you to be able to unlock that inner champion for yourself. So check them out today. 4 great locations across the St. Louis area, Victory Men's Health and victorymenshealth.com. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Happy to go out to the 101 ESPN hotline to be joined by our friend, the Blues insider for The Athletic. He's Jeremy Rutherford joining us here on the show, as he does each and every Tuesday. JR, appreciate the time as always, man. What was your biggest takeaway from the Panthers winning the Stanley Cup final last night?
Oh, it had to be Big Walt. I guess they catch him with the beer, and he's trying to hide the beer. I don't know if his trainer or his probation officer might have been watching, but he was trying to hide the beer. But no, it was just great to see the Tkachuk family and that celebration, just being around them for so many years. First of all, Big Walt, and then also Matthew and Brady and Chantel Taryn. It's just an amazing group. And not just them, but you got some former Blues with Vladimir Tarasenko and Nico Mikkola. Also, Jamie Kampan, who won a couple Stanley Cups with the Chicago Blackhawks, a former Blues video coach, and should have been an assistant here, should have been an assistant with the Blues, but for whatever reason, it didn't work out. He went on to have a lot of success, so congrats to Jamie Kampan, too.
Jerry, I'm glad they kept the camera on Big Walt, so you saw him cry, but then he's mouthing to his wife, "I can't stop bleeping crying." It was fantastic.
And I just can't imagine the nerves for him and everybody, but him yesterday. You know, Matthew talked about Big Walt and the family being back at his house when he backed out of the driveway. And he is literally driving to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals with a chance to win the first cup for the family. And I remember being over at their house a few times and, you know, them telling stories about Matthew and Brady going to Keith's games when he played for the Blues. And because they were young and had school the next day, Chantel would have to leave like at the second intermission and carry Matthew and Brady into the house while they were sleeping because they fell asleep on the way home. She said sometimes, Jeremy, I'd accidentally bang their heads on the wall when I'm carrying up to bed and wake them up. Yeah, and then the next morning they're up at school and then their practice and then on to careers in the NHL. So there's just a great story behind that family, and for it to culminate last night with the Stanley Cup was outstanding.
So, JR, the big story roster-wise for Florida that everybody's going to be talking about for good reason is the trade for Matthew Tkachuk, right? You're coming off the President's Trophy, you trade Huberdeau, you trade Weegar, and you end up getting this franchise-changing talent that's signed long-term, and he's become, in a lot of ways, the public face of the Florida Panthers. But if you get beyond that, what do you think are some of the lessons that not just the Blues, but teams across the NHL can learn from the way that the Florida Panthers were able to reach this mountaintop?
Yeah, no, you mentioned the big one, but, you know, don't be afraid to make big changes. And the Florida Panthers were going to be a good team, I think, regardless of what they did. You know, they had the structure there. They brought in the coach, Paul Maurice. But I think that they made some big changes. I mean, to trade Jonathan Huberdeau, who was a 100-plus point player, and also Mackenzie Weegar, who, you know, a couple years ago I was talking to Al McInnes about him. He felt like he was a Norris Trophy type defenseman. That was a monster deal. And the one thing I go back to, guys, is I wrote a Matthew Tkachuk story for The Athletic probably about a year and a half ago, and I talked to Paul Maurice for the story. You know, 25-minute conversation. I'll never forget him saying, Matthew Tkachuk came in here and we already had a captain, Barkov. We already had a leader. Guys were already listening to our leader. But Matthew, somehow, some way, osmosis, whatever, was able to come in here and just filter into the team and not act like he was the leader and not act like he was showing guys what to do, but just blend in and help show them the way. And you heard Paul Maurice talk about that last night with the group in general. Just talking about that room is just perfect in terms of what it takes to win a championship, and they showed why last night. So to me, it would be that. It would be, you know, bringing in a guy like Tkachuk, you know, moving out some guys where maybe it wasn't working, and then all the other pieces that they brought in to make that possible.
You know, to tie it in with the Blues, JR, the one thought that I found so interesting with Florida, you know, everybody in St. Louis when they're talking about defensemen is, well, you got to go trade or you got to draft a guy into the top four. Well, Florida, two guys that they used in the top four throughout the postseason was Gustav Forsling, who went through waivers two separate times before he got claimed by the Florida Panthers, and then Brandon Montour, who was traded for a third-round pick. So sometimes you can find top four defensemen through different means than just making significant trades or drafting guys in the top five.
I think you totally can, and I think all we have to do is go back to 2019 and look at that team, and it's not going to be a perfect comparison, but just look at that roster, and not just the defensemen, Alex. You know, to your point, yeah, you draft a Joel Edmondson and a Colton Parayko, but you also made a big trade for a Jay Bouwmeester. You know, you drafted a Vince Dunn and Carl Gunnarsson. You got a trade from Toronto, and you kind of pieced things together, and I don't think anybody was necessarily wowed by, those guys other than Alex Pietrangelo. But I think that it came together, and it can come together if you have the right players. And you look at the forward group, too. I mean, you get a Oscar Sundqvist in a trade with Pittsburgh. So, yeah, it doesn't have to be, go out and get the 3 most expensive free agents. It doesn't have to be drafting in the top 5 every year or, 2 out of 3 years. It's just a situation where if you have a general manager who can put it together, like we saw Bill Zito do the past couple of years with Florida, like Doug Armstrong did a few years ago with the St. Louis Blues, it can come together in so many different ways.
All right, Jared, it is officially off-season mode for the St. Louis Blues. It has been for a while, but now the NHL has caught up with them with the Stanley Cup being over last night. You had a great piece that came out earlier today on the perfect week for the St. Louis Blues when it comes to the NHL draft, free agency, a potential extension candidate, and Pavel Buchnevich. I want to focus on one piece of this specifically with you. You went to free agency and you said, what about if the Blues went out there and made a move for Chandler Stevenson, a pending UFA, previously with the Vegas Golden Knights? He's 30 years old, though, and he does play center. Why Chandler Stevenson in your mind when it comes to a perfect Blues offseason?
Yeah, and guys, I always talk about how the sausage is made when you're sitting back writing that story. I'm just a person who looks up the stats just like everybody else does. And when I pulled up Chandler Stevenson, I was hoping he was a little bit younger than 30. So when I saw that he was 30, hey, this still could work. Hey, listen, so you're putting this together, and I put together a free agency section and talked about the possibility of bringing in a guy like Chandler Stevenson. And here's why I did it. Yes, he's 30, but in the hypothetical situation that I wrote about, I said, hey, a 4-year contract. Here's the thing. I talked to Corey Pronman and Scott Wheeler, the guys who do the prospect stuff for The Athletic, and they said that they just don't believe that Dalibor Dvorsky can be ready for that number 2 center role. And I thought to myself, hey, if you can get a guy like Stevenson who's been very productive, yes, scores 15, 16, 17 goals the past couple of years, but he's a 50-point guy. He's a 52% face-off guy. He could come in. You don't have to have Buchnevich in the middle necessarily. Braden Shen doesn't have to play in the middle. Stevenson was a number 2 center on a Stanley Cup winning team a couple years ago. This guy can come in and help the Blues for a couple of years, and you don't have to rush Dvorsky. And, oh, by the way, he plays the wing too. So if Dvorsky is ready, let's say this year, next year, 3 years from now, Stevenson is a guy who could move over to the wing. He's not going to be super expensive. The website Evolving Hockey projects him for a 4-year contract for about $6 million. Maybe you get him less. Who knows? Just an idea, guys. I just think that the Blues are going to have to try to help solidify that top 6 and preferably a center.
Would you Well, yeah, Ross Colton's good. Would you rather do that one, JR, or would you rather the Blues offer sheet Martin Necas?
Well, I think Stevenson in this situation, because he's even though he's 30, he's a guy. Listen, the whole thing that I set this up for was that the Blues say they want to be competitive. I could easily take this a different direction and say, hey, just get younger. Necas is 25 years old. He's the guy with the Carolina Hurricanes who you could offer sheet this year. I wrote about it the other day. Hey, is that the best way the Blues could go? Maybe not. It was just an idea that we set up the other day. But in terms of Stevenson versus Necas, yeah, Necas could be great for this team. He's only 25. He's a center, but he plays the wing. He scored the past 2 years 28 and 24 goals as a 25-year-old. He could really help this team. But I think, going back to my point, if the Blues want to remain competitive, here's a guy, Stevenson, 30 years old, who's done it for a winning team. He's produced. You could plug him right into that lineup and not worry about it.
JR, we appreciate the time as always, man. People can read your full piece about the ideal, the best-case scenario week for the St. Louis Blues as we prepare for the NHL draft, free agency, and, of course, some potential extensions as well. That's up at The Athletic right now. They can also follow you, as always, on Twitter, at JP Rutherford. Appreciate the time, man. Safe travels out to Vegas for the draft this weekend.
Yep, thanks, guys.
You got
Always play it on red, JR. Always play it on red.
I'm more of a black.
Come on, man.
No?
That's not how you win.
I go green sometimes.
You go green?
Yeah.
Damn.
I like the odds.
You've got the money that you can just throw out there, though, right?
It's kind of like you with your 12-leg NFL season parlays where you're like,
and always split
put $10 down and win $3,600.
And always split tens. Always split tens.
That's your go-to.
Yeah. People don't like it. Blackjack dealer gets angry. Always split tens.
I just asked my friend, hey, what am I supposed to do here? They say, you should do this.
My cousin looks at the dealer and he's like, what should I do here? I'm like, you're going to ask the dealer what you should do?
I mean, they'll typically tell you.
Yeah, typically, and then they'll take your money
I
afterwards.
mean, the odds are always in their favor either way.
Yeah, I was going to say it's the casino, but that makes sense. I do not agree with JR on Chandler
About what?
Stevenson. On Chandler Stevenson, and I know we're going to get into this a little bit later, but I just looked at it with MoneyPuck.com, and look, JR knows what he's talking about. And the guy has produced points, but in the last 3 years, these are the guys that he's primarily played in between. Mark Stone, Max Pacioretty, Jack Eichel, Mark Stone, and then this year he played primarily with Mark Stone.
Those guys are pretty good.
Those guys are pretty good, and I'm not taking anything away from Chandler Stevenson, but...
Are you suggesting that playing with somebody like, I don't know, Pavel Buchnevich or Jordan Kyrou or Jake Neighbors or Braden Shen
or Dalibor Dvorsky, who's a rookie.
Or Brandon Saad, probably not the same level?
Could be. And the only reason I'm saying this is because and look, JR's projecting here. He's throwing it out there. The money that JR said to throw at Chandler Stevenson, I would just offer sheet to Martin Necas. Because Martin Necas is not primarily a centerman. He wants to be a centerman, but I'm going to go with Rod Brindamore that says your best asset is to be a winger.
Sure.
But if I could get a year out of you of being center until Dvorsky's ready and then use you on the wing, I think that's a much better position for the Blues than going after a 30-year-old who might have been at his best with playing with Mark Stone and Jack Eichel.
The difference is it's not just a 1-for-1 because it's Chandler Stevenson and a first and a third round pick versus Martin Necas.
Absolutely.
Because you do have to give up that first and third round pick if you end up offer sheeting Martin Necas. The other thing you could do is trade Pavel Buchnevich, for example, but now we're talking about Chandler Stevenson and Buch versus Martin Necas plus cap space.
But I think, and this is just a think here, if you're able to bring in a Martin Necas, you're not, in my opinion, drafting in the top half of the league next year. Because I think your offense is significantly better with that type of player.
In an offer sheet scenario or
in an offer sheet scenario.
Because now you're keeping Buch.
Yeah, and you're keeping Buch in an offer sheet scenario. And unless I move Buch for an upgrade on defense. But what I mean by that is if I'm drafting like I am right now, or let's say 18th, 19th, because I get into the playoffs and I get bounced in the first round, I don't care as much about that first round pick than I would if I was selecting in the top 10.
For me, knowing what we know about this year's free agency class, knowing what we know about the Blues plan and where they're at right now in their life cycle as an organization, I'm not signing anybody to over a $2 million contract, and I'm probably not signing anybody to a multi-year deal.
Agreed.
And that would take you out of the Chandler Stevenson market. I think he's a really good player. And if the Blues were close and the last piece that they needed was a number 2 center, number 3 center, I would be all in on that idea. I just don't think for where they're at right now, I would go after the 30-year-old center that you're going to have to give 4+ years to that plays a pretty physical brand of hockey. I don't know how that contract's going to age. And I don't want to be stuck with it in 4 years when the Blues are really trying to win again.
Yeah.
And now you've got $6 million committed to a guy that might be your third or fourth line center. I don't know if that's ideal for the St. Louis Blues.
And as a couple people brought up on the text line, I don't want Martin Necas, he's bad in the faceoff dot. I don't really care about the faceoff. I know it's important, but teams typically switch guys in the faceoff dot all the time. And if Dvorsky makes this team, you're using him. Or if Shen's playing a wing, you're using him in a faceoff. I don't care about the faceoff numbers as much as I care about the production.
And when he was a primary center for Carolina, he was about 45%.
Which that's better than 2 of your centermen from last year.
Yeah, the biggest thing is you got to be passable. Pavel Buchnevich was not passable as on the faceoff dot. That's the difference for me, is you've got to be at a spot where 45+% you're okay. Pavel Buchnevich is a career 25% guy, 30% guy, and last year he was 37%.
Yeah.
That's significantly lower than where you would expect from Martin Necas. So I think you can get by with that, again, as long as it's a stopgap thing. Mm-hmm. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. If you missed any of our conversation with Jeremy Rutherford, check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
Coming up next, how would you construct the outfield when Noot and Tommy Edman are scheduled to return? Sounds like they're not too far away. We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. So Michael Ciani's been great, but what's his role when the Cardinals get Larson Nootbaar and Tommy Edman back, potentially Jordan Walker down the road? It's a question that the morning show was talking about a little bit earlier today. And Alex, I was a little surprised by some of their answers. Randy was talking about how he would potentially even put Larson Nootbaar into center field and get the outfield that he wants that way. I think part of why your outfield is working right now defensively is because of Michael Ciani. I think he makes it possible to regularly have Brendan Donovan and Alec Burleson in your corners. And the reason why is because that dude is playing elite level center field. Like, I can't imagine there are 5 players in Major League Baseball that have been more important defensively to their teams this season than Michael Ciani has been for the Cardinals. I saw a stat the other day. The Cardinals on the year are like plus 10 in defensive runs saved on the year, and Michael Ciani is plus 7. So essentially, the Cardinals plus is from one position, and it's Michael Ciani. Alex, what do you view as the outlook for this outfield when they do get Lars Nootbaar and Tommy Edman back? How are you utilizing these pieces?
I mean, Lars Nootbaar, to me, goes back into the outfield, and as good as Alec Burleson has been, I just think he moves into a DH role for me, and you can rotate if you prefer to continue to get reps for Burleson with Donovan, but I think your ideal outfield in the corners would be Brendan Donovan and Lars Nootbaar. And honestly, when Tommy Edman's back, I'm not taking Michael Ciani out of the lineup. Michael Ciani's glove is too important to lose in the outfield. And I understand a lot of people believe Tommy Edman can be very, very good in the outfield, center field specifically, but I haven't seen it yet. And what I've seen is Michael Ciani save Cardinals pitching multiple times like he did last night. That game was a victory because of the catch he made in the first inning and the 9th inning. So I would not take Michael Ciani out. And if you really need to get Tommy Edman reps, then you can go the split side of things to where Tommy Edman, I believe it's against lefties, he hits better when he's hitting from the right side. Then you can put him in there, and then righties, Michael Ciani's out there. But I'm going to ride Michael Ciani as much as I can in center field because I think his defense makes my team significantly better.
Yeah, I would too. I would probably platoon center field to where against righty Ciani would get the start in center field because I think he's the best defensive center fielder in the organization. I think he's better than what Victor Scott was, and I think he's better than Tommy Edman. We saw a little bit of Tommy Edman last year. I mean, no coincidence, he is second among baseball and outfielders in outs above average at +9. The only guy better than him is Jacob Young with the Washington Nationals. So I think you start him against right-handed pitching, and look, I know his offense, there's not a lot to be desired there, but if the Cardinals are hitting, that's not a problem. You know, you put him in the 9 spot, he can bunt a guy over if necessary and flip things back over to the top of your order. When you go up against lefties, you put Tommy Edman in there and gets to start in center field where he has a better platoon advantage, and later in the game, you can potentially move Edman around if you want to, and you put Michael Ciani back in center field for his Gold Glove level caliber defense that he brings out there to the outfield.
I think it all just depends on where your offense is at. If your offense around Michael Ciani is performing the way that it is right now, that dude starts every time that you see a right-handed pitcher. Every single time. And it's not because Ciani's great against righties, but it's because I'm not getting a significant upgrade with Tommy Edman, typically, in the lineup against lefties, and so I'll just take the defense. I'll just lean towards defense in center field. I can have one position every day where, hey, this guy's in there for his defense. I thought it was going to be 2 coming into the season, potentially with Masyn Winn as well, but that has gone in the other direction, obviously. So now it's just 1. Yeah, I'm going to have that dude out there. He's going to be amazing for me defensively, and I'll just worry about the offense from everybody else. This dude's in there for another reason. I get other people to score runs. He saves them. I got to find a way to score more than the other team. This helps me score more than the other team by having him in my lineup on a day-in, day-out basis. Against lefties, I'm totally with you guys. I'd have Tommy Edman back out there in center field. He gives me the best chance there. And if you want to use Tommy Edman against right-handed pitchers, you use him as a defensive replacement or as a pinch hitter or as a pinch runner late in a game. He becomes a weapon for you, a guy that you can deploy, and he helps you in those games that are really tight, which the Cardinals are playing a lot of those right now. I don't mind that. That's not a bad thing to be able to just have a bench weapon that you like to have there. So I think Ciani's earned a role for this team for the rest of this season and potentially even beyond because of how great he is defensively. I would like him to be a better hitter. But if this is what it is what it is, man. A lot of teams would like to have an elite Gold Glove caliber defender when they're in this window of contention potentially that the Cardinals have right now. What I think it's really interesting is what you do around him. Because Nootbaar's got to start every day. When he's available, he's a really good player. He's good defensively, brings value on the bases. He hits for a little bit of power, gets on base at a high clip. He's like an analytical darling, right? I understand some people think that he's a little overrated. He's a good player, even if you think that he's not what he was expected to be.
Peak Lars.
The rest of it becomes really kind of compelling, in my opinion, Alex, because I think Burleson is just like your everyday DH at this point.
Agreed.
Because that's where he brings the most value is with the bat. He's not a bad outfielder, but he's not as good as the other guys. Donovan probably becomes one of your everyday corner outfielders.
I think he's in left.
So you just go Donovan, Nootbaar, Siani.
Yep.
Is your three.
That's what I would do.
Yeah, and then your DH is Burleson. And a lot of
group of guys, man.
A lot of this is it's very lefty heavy. Very lefty heavy.
But against right-handed pitchers, that's fine. Like you've got
absolutely
Gorman, Nootbaar, Donovan, Siani, and Burleson all against lefty. And if they bring in or against righties, excuse me, and if they bring in a lefty reliever later on, you've got guys coming off the bench that you can use.
I think a lot of it just depends too on how guys are hitting, because if you continue to go through like bad droughts, then obviously you can move guys around a little bit. I don't think they want to do that. You want to keep guys in their consistent positions, especially if Donovan's going to be an everyday outfielder and Edman's back. Well, now you've got the utility piece in Edman. But, if Goldschmidt goes through a little bit of a dry spell, you got Alec Burleson that can do first base for you, and you got the DH position that can come in. Honestly, it is a massive weapon for this Cardinals team if all of these guys are hitting properly. Because, you're stacked from top to bottom when it comes to right-handed pitching.
Yeah, and I still think they're going to have to find a right-handed bat that can come off of the bench. And I understand, like, against righties, you've got Tommy Edman. Tommy Edman's not really a guy that necessarily scares you if you had to go pinch hit for somebody versus a left-handed pitcher. But, like, if it's in the 9 spot and you're looking for somebody to get on base, boom, Tommy Edman. But if you're looking to do damage...
Can't you keep Ivan Herrera as that, though, and carry 3 catchers?
I guess you could. I'm fascinated to know what they do when Herrera's ready to come back. I think they're going to carry 3 catchers.
To me, the guy that gets really interesting is Walker.
I don't know if Walker's back up with this team.
I don't think he comes back.
That's what I'm saying. Is like he's the one to me that becomes a really interesting conversation. Because where does he fit?
Well, I was going to say, he doesn't fit in this team. He doesn't fit.
Eventually he does.
Next year. Next year you have a trade piece that can get you something significant, but if he fits. You got to decide. You're gonna have to decide. And to me, I think it's going to come down to probably Donovan or Nootbaar. Because if Burleson is this, and I would imagine Burleson's going to be your first baseman, Walker's moving to the outfield, you're going to have to move on from one of these outfielders.
What if you just don't? And what I mean by that is you just, like you said, Burleson becomes your first baseman. So Goldie's out, Burleson becomes your first baseman. And now I've got probably Nootbaar in left, Siani / Edman in center, and I've got Walker in right. And I know people don't like hearing this, but then Donovan becomes an everyday player by playing different positions. What the expectation was for him coming into the season. He'll play one day at third. He'll play another day at second. He'll play another day in left. He'll play another day in right. And he just becomes for you what Ben Zobrist was for like a 5-year stretch of his career. And if somebody gets hurt, well, Donovan just becomes the guy that starts at that position for the next 2 weeks.
I mean, it's definitely doable.
That's what I would do.
You can accomplish that, but how deficient are you in another area? Do you need to make a trade to upgrade significantly? Because you've got offense, you've got a lot of pieces.
You have money to go spend if you do this on your pitching.
But who's out there?
I've got $25 million that I can go reallocate for my pitching side of things via free agency that Goldie was previously taking up, and now he's no longer.
And typically this team struggles when they're handing money out to free agent pitchers.
No, we've been good
didn't
at
go
that.
poorly this year with the pitching that they decided to add. It worked out really well.
Yeah, but those are low level. When you're paying 25.
Sonny Gray's not a low level starter, man. That guy worked. They got it right. I'll give them credit where it's due. They have missed a lot, especially in the bullpen. They got it right this past offseason pitching-wise.
I think yes, what you're saying about Donovan, like I understand and it makes sense. The problem is I think twofold. One, we're at the point now where the Cardinals is mostly a fairly young roster to where those guys probably don't need as many days off. Everybody wanted them to be like the Atlanta Braves to rain out the same lineup. They should be able to do that next year. Like the only old guy
isn't bad.
is Nolan Arenado. I want those guys playing. I want them playing every day. I don't want the whole one day off thing. We got upset about the Masyn Winn thing. And I understand he had a back issue.
Was fine for Masyn Winn.
I think and you get an off day built in the week. It's not like it was where it was. A lot of times you'd play 18 straight.
DH day? Because I've got an open DH spot whenever you do that, and you could just hey, one day a week, Walker, you're going to be at a DH spot. One day a week, Gorman, you're going to be a DH this day. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And you just help keep everybody fresh that way. Give them one day off from the field every single week. And again, Donovan becomes the guy that starts in that spot. And when those guys aren't off, well, then Donovan, you're a DH today.
Yeah, maybe. I don't
think
know.
that's a bad way to go about it.
I would rather him be playing the field. I think it's easier, and they've talked about this. They like it better when guys are playing the field, can get more comfortable, and feel like in the rhythm of a game.
Donovan's the one guy that isn't that way. Donovan is the one guy on your roster that can actually fill this role. It's why I love him being the one that moves around instead of having... The problem last year was everybody was moving around. If you have one piece that becomes the queen on the chessboard, and that's who Donovan has been in his career thus far, it's why he won a utility gold glove. It's because he can play everywhere capably. I don't think he's great anywhere. I think he's pretty good everywhere. I think this is the value of having a player like Brendan Donovan. It was Ben Zobrist. The value was he can play second, he can play in the outfield. Like, he can do anything for you at any time. He's pretty good at all of it. And his bat also plays.
And the other thing about it, too, is if another guy is not hitting, like, let's say Jordan Walker's going through it again, well, you've got Brendan Donovan who's going to be in there. Like, I agree with BK. I don't mind having a player that 7 days a week, 6 days a week, I know he's going to be in the lineup because he can play at every position. Now, if it starts to affect Brendan Donovan, then you have bigger decisions to make. But I personally don't think it's going to affect him. It seems like he thrives under those conditions. The only reason I brought up moving somebody is because if there's nobody on the free agent market that you think it makes sense, man, you've got one hell of a weapon that nobody else has in terms of you could legitimately trade a player that is not a middle of the order bat, but either a top of the order bat or somebody who's hitting in the 5-6 hole in the major leagues that you could dangle out there to bring in a significant piece to give you the upper hand.
To me, the trade chip is Dylan Carlson.
Well, now you're not getting a significant piece.
I'm with you, but I think Dylan Carlson at the deadline becomes your trade chip.
Absolutely, I agree with that.
And the reason why is because I don't know where he fits. I don't know where he fits for this team long term or short term. He doesn't have a role right now, really. And there's almost no way for him to crack this lineup in the future. Where's he going to play? Mm-hmm. He's not a center fielder. The Cardinals have told you that with their actions. And they don't think he's a better corner outfielder offensively than Donovan, than Burleson, Lars Nootbaar, eventually Jordan Walker they think will be with that guy. Like, there's no spot for him on this roster long term. He's either going to be in AAA or he's going to be traded at this year's deadline.
Oh, yeah, I think he's going down to AAA as soon as everybody's healthy again. So your better bet is to trade him and get a bullpen piece.
Speaking of adding bats to the roster, could one be coming via trade at this year's deadline? That's what one national analyst thinks should happen. We'll tell you about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Terry Henderson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals beat the Braves yesterday 4-3. They will be back in action tonight. 6:45 will be first pitch. Ronaldo Lopez will get the start for the Atlanta Braves, and Kyle Gibson will be on the mound for the St. Louis Cardinals. The Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, so we talk a lot about what the Cardinals could do as we get closer to the deadline, and we rely on the insiders to tell us, all right, here's what's actually happening across Major League Baseball. Jeff Passan, I believe, to be one of the best in the business, Alex, and he put out a piece earlier today on who he believes are the top contenders to be traded at the deadline for the teams that are actually in the race. So he listed 13 different teams across Major League Baseball and what their current biggest weakness is and who they could target at the deadline that would be able to fill said weakness. So for the Cardinals, he said that their biggest weaknesses are clutch hitting.
True.
I think Alex would agree with that one.
RISP, baby. What does it mean?
It means bad. Bad is what it means here in St. Louis. And he also said back end of the rotation starter is what they would like to add.
Nah,
the best match for the Cardinals is
Gucci!
Brent Rooker.
What the hell?
Brent
That's
Rooker.
not a pitcher.
He is a designated hitter / corner outfielder who really doesn't play a whole lot in the corner outfield. He's essentially a designated hitter.
Good.
He's been pretty good for the A's over the last couple of seasons. Classic A's player, strikes out a ton, swings and misses all the time, but when he makes contact, makes really hard contact. Hit 30 home runs last year, is on pace to do basically the same thing this year. He has 13 home runs so far on the season, and most importantly, he's really good with runners in scoring position. So far this year, Alex, he's batting .295 with a slugging percentage. A slugging percentage of .707 with runners in scoring position. Yeah, he's been
I'll take that.
Really effective in those spots. For perspective, the Cardinals as a team are batting .222 with a slugging percentage of .340 in runners in scoring position.
This guy's a former Royal. Is this why you picked him out?
Very briefly with the Royals. Alex, this would be quite the zag. A lot of us are expecting a pitching. That's going to be their plan once again at this year's deadline. You interested in it? A right-handed hitter that comes in and maybe can help you out a DH? I'm not sure I see the fit.
I mean, look, as king of the RISP fan club, I would love a dude who is hitting almost 300 with runners in scoring position. But where is he getting at bats? If he's a corner outfielder, well, we just established that there's nowhere for you to play.
And that's only in name because you technically have to have a position. Like he's technically a corner outfielder.
Again, yeah, corner outfielder means you're a bench bat, probably.
He's a corner outfielder the way Kyle Schwarber's a corner outfielder.
He's a corner.
You can put him out there. You're not feeling good about it.
He's a corner outfielder like Matt Adams was a corner outfielder.
Yeah,
better off a first base with a bench bat.
Don't throw Big City under the bus.
I love Big City,
and
but
an RBI in Mexico.
I love Big City, but I love Big City as a bench bat, especially when the bases are loaded. But you're not doing that. As a DH, you're not getting any at-bats because whether it's Alec Burleson or Brendan Donovan, it doesn't matter. But there's a DH that is going to be filled every single day, so you're a bench bat. And if you're a bench bat, how often are you coming up with a big play? Now, look, I think if I was trading some low-level prospect that I had no idea who he was,
that's not what it's going to be.
Then I would get Brent Rooker because off of the bench in the 7th inning when Paul Goldschmidt's at the plate, I'm bringing that dude to the plate rather than Paul Goldschmidt. But
Brent Rooker has 3 years of club control left. He's going to nab a pretty decent prospect.
And that's why I can't do that because what you would pay to get that guy should be going to a pitcher because that's the bigger weakness.
Now, the baseball trade value site, like you take it or leave it, it just gives you an idea of kind of here's roughly what the value is for players across the league, right? It's not exact. It's every team values every player differently, so keep that in mind. But for them, it'd be something like Gordon Graceffo plus TK Roby would be the type of return that you'd be looking at.
For a bench bat? No way.
For a Rooker. If this team was in need of a DH right now, I could see the value here because this team does. It would be nice to have another legitimate right-handed bat that hits for power. I would like to see that for the Cardinals. I just don't see where he fits with this specific club. I don't. They're not giving up on Goldie. They're not giving up on Arenado. If they were, okay, we could talk about Brent Rooker. They're not going to, and so I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense here, even though theoretically speaking, I see how you could get yourself there.
If he didn't have 3 years of club control and he was going to cost that much, and really Roby's the only one I'm worried about. Graceffo, trade him. if he was like a free agent to be or had 1+ year left, I think he would fit this team. Because I looked this up. The Cardinals have only 4 guys on their roster that have an OPS over 700 versus left-handed pitching. And 2 of those guys haven't really played. One of them, Contreras, who's been hurt, and the other, Carpenter. So the only 2 guys with 70-plus plate appearances that have an OPS over 700, which isn't all that great, is Paul Goldschmidt at 708 and Masyn Winn at 790. Even Ivan Herrera is not that high on this list at 650. Like, they need a right-handed bat that could start as the DH versus lefties, and that would be his role. But that's not that many starts. Most of the league is right-handed heavy.
About 20% of the time, yeah.
That's where if he was, a guy that was a free agent at the end of the year or had maybe one more year of arbitration, I think he would make sense for the St. Louis Cardinals. But for what you would have to give up in a TK Roby, one of your top pitching prospects,
can't do it.
I just don't think he makes that much sense for the Cardinals. He does on paper make sense, but in terms of what you have to give up, I don't think so.
If I could get the Brent Rooker as a pitcher comp, give me that right now.
Yeah, the high upside, come into
control. Give me that right now. But you can't do it.
I just don't. I don't see it. I don't see it for the Cardinals. I think T-Bone's right. If you could get a guy that has, he's a free agent at the end of the year, this kind of player, right-handed, can come in and be
maybe a
J.D. Davis,
Cardinal.
for example.
Oh, God, he would have been great with the Cardinals.
He could have made some sense. They're in a bit of a roster crunch as well. Something to keep in mind. Like when they do
the 40
get these,
man.
No, 26 man. When they do get these guys back healthy, the 40 man, whatever, they'll figure that out.
BK's ready to ship guys out left and right.
There are going to be some difficult decisions that need to be made for the Cardinals. Like whether it's, hey, what are you doing at catcher long term? It's fine to have Contreras and Pages right now. What's your plan with Herrera? Because you told everybody before the season, this dude needs to be at the big leagues. We're shipping out Kisner because he has nothing left to accomplish at AAA. It's time for him to learn the major league game and to be around the club on a day-in, day-out basis. Okay, well, that was the plan coming into the season. It was also the plan that Jordan Walker was going to be your everyday right fielder coming into the season.
Plans always work out.
They change.
Tommy Evans was supposed to be your center fielder, too.
So what's happening with Herrera? Is it going to be 3 catchers the rest of the way? Not totally opposed to it, but is that the plan? Got to figure that out. What's the plan with Crawford and Carpenter? It sounds like the team really likes those dudes. They're good leaders. And I know, you want to put 5% value on that, 1% value on it. There's some value.
Well, Alec Burleson's giving credit to Matt Carpenter, so you got to give him some credit.
Again, even if it's 1% of the credit, some piece of that pie goes to Matt Carpenter. For me, yeah, you're going to send him down. That's going to be the first one that ends up going away. But Dylan Carlson, probably another that's going to go away when Lars Nootbaar returns. If you added anybody else, whether that's Jordan Walker, Ivan Herrera, one of these guys that you're trading for at the deadline, now you're making more significant cuts. Now you're making more significant decisions that affect both the short and long term of your team. That's where things get really difficult.
And I think that's where it comes down to, okay, we have to suck it up and deal with having 2 catchers, which means a couple of things. One, you're using Herrera in some spots, but 2, you don't have that bench bat available to you. Because at least with your 3 catchers, Herrera's coming off of the bench as a right-handed hitter, which is a good piece to have. And now you're talking more about those options that are beyond the starting 9.
All right, last thing on this. In this piece from Jeff Passan, there were 13 teams listed, as I mentioned. 5 of them. Their biggest need at the deadline, according to Jeff Passan, is some kind of starting pitcher.
Good thing the Cardinals
end or back into the rotation.
Good thing the Cardinals needed a hitter.
The pitchers that were listed, now he matched 4 of them for those 7 that need a starting pitcher. Eric Fetty was one of them that he listed in this. Garrett Crochet was another who the Cardinals not going to be in that market. Jack Flaherty, Cardinals not going to be in that market. And then the other one that he mentioned here was Severino. Those are the 4 starting pitchers that he had on the move. Man, the closer that we get to the deadline, the more that we talk about this, the more I feel like Cardinals fans are going to be real disappointed by the names that are connected to their team when it comes to the trade market, pitching-wise. And it's not just because the Cardinals are aiming low, it's because Major League Baseball just does not have the arms to offer.
I was just going to say, bad year to be in the market to try and acquire pitching for a playoff run, because the years past, it's felt like there's been a lot of dudes that you can go out there and be aggressive about. This year, you're going to be aggressive for Eric Fetty.
There might be some good bullpen arms, but I don't think there's going to be a whole lot in the way of starting pitching.
Unless there's a surprise team that becomes a seller. That we don't, like if Toronto says,
or
you know
Houston.
what, fire sale, make us your best offer and you can have any of our starters, or Houston, for example, or the Texas Rangers, for example. There are some teams that have some decent arms, but right now they're not in sell mode, and if they're not in sell mode by the time we get to the deadline, yeah, you're going to have that kind of blah.
Maybe the
trade
Pirates
deadline.
decide to blow it up and you get Paul
Skeens?
Nah,
and Jared Jones.
Jared Jones, let's be honest. He's
Let's
Alex's
go
team
get
on
him.
BK. Junk Drawers next. All right, let's dive into the junk drawer. T-Bone, what do you got for us today?
All right, you guys have young kids at home. BK's got a baby
5 of them.
who's getting close to turning 1. Alex, how old's your youngest?
So she turned 2 in July.
That's
so
right.
a month from now,
one on
she's
the way.
July.
Yeah, you got
and
another
then
one on the way.
3rd in August.
So my question for you guys is, with your guys' baby, I saw a video. F1 was recently in Spain, and someone had one of the F1 drivers sign their baby. Is there an athlete that you would be willing to have sign your baby?
I just don't see the value in it.
Yeah, I
like,
think
I'm
that's
not judging
weird.
other people that do it. Whatever. Do whatever suits you. Do whatever
But
makes
you
your family
lose
happy.
that autograph.
That's the thing. Like,
Yeah,
if
you
I
keep the clothes.
Well, yeah, okay, but are you
I
signing
thought
the
you were
baby or
saying
the
signing
clothes?
The baby.
He signed the clothes. But
Oh,
I would
you
say
can sign
the
whatever
baby
you want
because
on my
I've seen that
clothes.
as well.
Yeah, I just like if I want that signature, the value is the signature, right? So I want that to be on a piece of memorabilia that I'm going to have long term and I'll be able to look back on. I just don't see the value in getting my baby signed.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to it. I would rather have it somewhere
And
else.
maybe it's just working in sports that takes a little of the fandom to wait. Do you like get excited over autographs anymore?
No.
So the last autograph that I got that I was like super pumped about was Mike Arrizioni, because my wife got me a Arrizioni Miracle on Ice jersey, and I sent it to him at BU, and he signed it for me. That was the last one I got excited about, but it was only because I had a jersey and I wanted to get the autograph. I don't know if there's any athlete out there now that I'm like, I got to get that autograph.
It does nothing for me because I'm the age of the players now.
Yeah.
I think that's probably when
Older.
it changes. Like once you become the same
man.
age and they're and not in terms of athleticism, obviously, but in terms of like just age range,
come on,
they're
buddy.
your peers.
You woke up and you ran this morning.
That dude, it is so
Gym
It
guys.
is so hot outside right now.
Good for you guys.
It was. I think I got out there at 7:15 on the roads today. Oh my god!
Well, don't underestimate the power of AC in your house.
It's toasty.
sorry, bud.
But yeah, I don't.
Yeah,
There's nothing for me. I think it'll be really cool to see my son get an autograph.
yeah.
But for me, no.
I think a picture is more important than an autograph these days.
I love
I would
having a
rather
signed
do that.
picture.
I would
Yeah.
rather do that. Have a picture next to somebody. Because even take it beyond athlete. Would you have a celebrity sign your baby's clothes? Like I would much rather have a picture than an autograph.
Unless it's a jersey, I could care less if it was really signed.
I wonder, and we certainly don't have this kind of appeal, but I wonder for celebrities what's more annoying, the autograph or the picture? Because the picture can be super annoying. I think it can go really quick or it can take forever.
I don't know if either
depending
are
on the
annoying as long
circumstance.
as they're quick. I think if both are, hey, will you do this? Hey, thank you so much. I love your work. That's great. The 15-minute conversation you have about how much you love the individual, I think that's where it probably annoys the individual.
I'd agree with that. I would think that they would prefer signing, though, because it is just quick. Like, you don't even really have to even see what you're doing. You can say, oh, sign this, done, and walk away. Picture got to pause, got to put on the fake smile.
you have to smile.
Pretend you like the person for the picture.
Yeah.
You know, like I would think it's more of the autograph that's a lot easier than the
Yeah, like I said, I think
signing.
if you make it a quick process that's just like, hey, man, I love you so much. Would you mind just doing this? Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
So this is not going to surprise anybody.
Someone wants our autograph?
Who?
Oh.
My wife is a big fan of this YouTuber that does a bunch of stuff for Disney World. And if you're surprised that
Probably the
there's-
same YouTuber my wife likes.
if you're surprised that there is somebody that does that, boy, there is a whole market for that I had no idea about. There are
Yep.
people that literally just walk around Disney World, T-Bone, all day long and do nothing. They don't talk. They just walk around and videotape
My
for
daughter's-
like
do
hours.
that.
My daughter's at
And they
dinner
get
time.
hundreds of thousands of views. It's crazy.
My daughter's at dinner time just watch people that film rides at Disney World.
It's insane, man.
they love.
But anyways, so there's this girl that does a really good job with it. She's super talented. She's like our age. I think she's like 35. And we went down there to Disney World. This is last January, I guess it would have been. And we saw her in the wild at Disney World.
In the wild?
Yeah, we were on the bus.
in her natural habitat?
And I was like, Kara, I think we got to get a picture with her. And she was like, are you sure?
You said that?
Yeah, we watch this like every day.
BK doing his best like Steve Irwin impression. Look at it over there. It's beautiful. She's walking around Disney World.
So we take a picture with her, and the next week she puts out the video that she was working on while she was there.
And you're in it.
And, we are briefly. You can see my ass in the bus.
oh, she's getting out of control.
BK going the Leonardo DiCaprio. That's my ass.
He's doing this in the back of her video like, hey.
But we see the video, and there's a disclaimer on it where she's like, "This is the craziest day I've ever tried to do in Disney World. I'm not stopping for anything. I gotta go. And I was like, oh my God.
Loser.
I'm an a-hole.
Way to go.
I'm the worst. So yeah, that was our experience.
Oh, this one's getting out of control.
With somebody. Somebody said Molly from Mammoth Club. That is correct. That is exactly the one that we watch.
Not familiar.
I don't know that one, man.
Mammoth Club.
I don't know that one.
Good Disney content if you're looking for that.
you.
Hey, man.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK. What do you guys watch?
No, I told you. It's literally, we watch Soundless.
Oh, I thought your wife watched
She watches like a ton of different ones. I don't know what they're called because she's the one that watches them, but it's Soundless Disney rides, and then it's the fireworks show. That's what my daughters want at dinner time.
Somebody
cool,
said
whatever.
That they saw Sonny Gray at the Fox Theater for Nate Bargatze on Sunday. Said, nice work today. And he thanked me. Athletes appreciate being recognized, but doing so discreetly.
Yeah, I remember seeing when I was in middle school, he came here to St. Louis for a field trip, and we were at the zoo.
Only Illinois, man.
Jason Mott was coming off of Tommy John surgery, and we saw him with his family. And I said, is that Jason Mott? So we bought tickets for the Stingray thing, and we all walked in there. He said, hey, don't tell anybody here. I'll sign autographs and take a photo with you guys. And it made the school yearbook.
I don't know if I've ever approached like an athlete or somebody, a celebrity in public, because like in my head, I'm like, I don't want this person to hate me. Well, it's like, I don't want this person to hate me. So it's like, I'm just not going to bother them. I'm going to let them go on with their day.
Kara saw Travis Kelce at Disney World 3 years ago. I wasn't with her at the time.
I saw him at the Stanley Cup when it was here. I think it was game 6. He was walking around with his girlfriend. It wasn't Taylor Swift. Pre-Taylor Swift.
He's Alex T-Bone on BK. Coming up next, are you ready to get an older center into the Blues lineup next year? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends at Rhino Shield. If you're a business owner right now, then it's time to give Darren a call to have him come out and upgrade the exterior of your business. And look, there are tons of different businesses that have used Rhino Shield, whether it's Chesterfield Amphitheater, Kempen Automotive in House Springs, Cottleville Smiles. Almost on a daily basis, I get text from Darren that says another business has gone with Rhino Shield. And why they're doing it is because they want the premier coating on their house. You notice how I say coating and not paint, because paint deteriorates over time. The ceramic coating that Rhino Shield uses, it's 8 to 10 times thicker than any paint you're going to put on the exterior of your home or your business, and it sticks with whatever. You vinyl, block, brick, asbestos. It can handle anything. They even will take care of the roofing as well. And Rhino Shield's backed by a 25-year transferable warranty. So give Darren a call today. Tell him Alex Ferrario sent you, and get the exterior coating of a Rhino with Rhino Shield. 877-25-RHINO. That's 877-25RHINO.com.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, so are you ready to sign an older center for the Blues this offseason?
Yeah.
Jeremy Rutherford sure is, and he wrote about it earlier today on The Athletic. He put together his ideal best-case scenario next week for the Blues. So, Alex, this would include free agency, the start of free agency at least, and the NHL draft, and he also included the sweepstakes with Pavel Buchnevich and his re-signing as well. For free agency, he said he thinks that the best-case scenario for the Blues is to sign Chandler Stevenson, a center who previously played for Vegas. He's a good player. There's no doubt about that. It's hard to argue. 50-plus points in each of the last 3 seasons. He's good on the faceoff dot, wins about 53% of the time. He's played a ton of postseason games, 95 games in total, 15 goals, 39 points in those 95 playoff games. This is a good player that plays the style that we certainly would like to see more of with the Blues, physical, and he could be your number 2 center. Here's the problem. He's 30 years old. And he's got him signing a 4-year deal worth $24 million, so $6 million per season. Alex, I'm just out. I'm out on signing a 30-year-old center to that kind of a deal. I would rather go in so many other ways. If you feel like number 2 center is a huge need for the Blues, I don't blame you. I feel the same way. I know I bring up the name all the time, and I've done this for a year and a half now, so if you're sick of it, I don't blame you. But Ross Colton is just out there waiting for somebody to come give him a new home. Because the Avalanche just signed Middlestat earlier today to a multi-year contract extension. They've got other moves that they want to do. They don't have the money for Colton on their roster right now. He's a really solid young center. Is he a number 2 center, most likely long-term? No. Can he fill that void for you for the foreseeable future? I think so, while you're waiting on Dalibor Dvorsky to become that guy. And worst-case scenario, and you just put Braden Shin at the number 2 center role. You have Ross Colton as your number 3 center, and you wait for Dvorsky to take over in that number 2 center capacity. It's cheap, young, won't cost you a whole lot in terms of trade. That would be my preferred destination. Another one is something that I know, Alex, you prefer as well with Martin Necas. How do you feel about going with the older route, though, and getting Chandler Stevenson?
I don't mind it if it was a different player than Chandler Stevenson, because I'd be very concerned that you get the Chandler Stevenson that was the Washington Capitals and not the Vegas Golden Knights, because unless I've got Mark Stone and Jack Eichel on the line with them, it's going to be hard to get that type of production. And I don't know if Chandler Stevenson profiles as a number 2 centerman. I think he profiles more as a number 3, but for right now, you need somebody who's at a number 2. And long term, JR said it in his piece, I don't know if Dvorsky is a centerman. Like, I think they hope he is, but there's a lot more work to be done with him as a centerman, and it's hard to just become that at the NHL level. So I just think there are better options out there for you. First priority this offseason has nothing to do with the forward position and everything to do with your defense. But once you get past the defense, if I'm going down this path, man, if I'm spending $6 million on somebody, I'm going to spend that on an offer sheet and lose the first-round pick in 2025. And I know that sucks for a lot of people, but I'm offer sheeting one of 2 guys, Martin Necas or Shane Pinto. And those 2 guys, the talent level that they provide, puts me in a position where I'm drafting 18 to 23. And I don't need that first-round pick because now my core is set. I've got my pieces. I've got my Snuggeroos, my Dvorskys, my Bolducs, my Neighbors, my Thomas, my Kyrou, and now the other centerman. My top 6 is set. And now I got to fill out the places elsewhere. So I like Chandler Stevenson. It would not surprise me if Chandler Stevenson goes somewhere and continues to have success, but he's going to go somewhere that's already an established team that just needs somebody to be the finisher for them, and Chandler Stevenson's not going to be that here in St. Louis.
Yeah, I get where JR's going with it, and if the Blues were closer than what I believe they are, I'd be in favor of it. I think he's a really good player. I probably view him as a little bit better, Alex. That's probably one piece of the difference between the two of us. I think he is, for your center position, kind of what Brandon Saad was on the wing. Mm-hmm. Where, is it the ideal scenario? No, if it was, he wouldn't be able to hit the market. Like, you don't let those kinds of players hit the market. But if you're looking for a number 2 or a middle 6 center that can come in and you pretty much know what you're getting out of him, I think he can be that. So if there's a contender out there that wants that kind of a player and has $6 million to spend, I think he could be a good signing elsewhere. Hell, 2 years from now, if the Blues were then what they're going to be and Chandler Stevenson becomes available, whoever that version of Chandler Stevenson is, I'd be in favor of them signing him then. But right now just doesn't feel like the right timing.
Let me ask you this, and I'm asking the listeners too that might be debating us in their car listening.
Sure.
What are you signing him for? Are you signing him for upside or experience?
The latter. You're signing him to plug a hole. You're signing him to come in and be a really solid, capable middle six
who can be a veteran. Yeah. Then why not spend $3 million less on David Perron?
Well, the center. I
got centers, though.
Do you?
I got, not long-term, no, but Chandler Stevenson's not long-term. I've got Shen. I've got, if Buchnevich is here, you'll put him there. You've got Dvorsky.
I think the thing is, like, and JR, if you're going down this path, you're saying Dvorsky's not ready and Buch isn't a center.
And JR even said it. The move that he put out there is if they believe they can compete now. But I would argue I'm better off with a Braden Shen at that center position next year and just planning as last year was a one-off, because we've seen that multiple times with Blues players, and bringing in a David Perron who can guide my wingers moving forward, than bringing in a Chandler Stevenson where there's zero upside, and who's he trying to teach the position to?
Sure.
Because I don't need that. I don't have a lot of centers that are up and coming in my position. I need somebody who can overtake Braden Shen's role.
Have we talked enough about Kevin Hayes as a trade candidate this offseason, or no? Because I think no.
No, well, I think the reason why is because you can't move that. Like, unless you're
50% retained, let's do it.
I don't even know if a team would take that on. I mean, Kevin Hayes did not.
1.7? I think somebody would take on 1.7 million.
But I don't believe Kevin Hayes had a good enough season for the Blues that would deem somebody to say, I want this.
Oscar Sundqvist was 1.5 as a fourth-line center. You could take on Kevin Hayes at 1.7 for the next 2 years. You've got your fourth-line center. Let's go.
If a team's calling me and saying, hey, we want to move on from Kevin Hayes and we'll leave 50% of the salary, if I'm that other team, I'm going to say, what else are you giving me? Because I'm not just going to take Kevin Hayes. You're going to give me something else. And I'm not going to trade something else to move on. If I'm trading something else to move on from contract, I can list about 3 other guys that I'd be willing to do that before Kevin Hayes.
All right, the last thing here, Blues related, as we get into the offseason mode. Yesterday, the Stanley Cup final coming to an end. Congratulations to Matthew Tkachuk, the Tkachuk family, and to the Florida Panthers. Over on The Athletic, they put out a rating, Alex. This is not particularly kind to the Blues. No surprise to anybody. Of the top best teams when it comes to their defensemen. Moving forward.
Oh, the Blues got to be top 10.
They weren't last. Last was San Jose.
If you ain't first, you're last.
31st was the Anaheim Ducks. 30th was the Detroit Red Wings, interestingly enough.
So Jake Wellman's not a... Oli Mata, BK's guy.
I think he's a UFA.
No, I think they got him one more year.
29 is your St. Louis Blues. Congratulations. The 19th percentile is where they've got him at.
For that.
And they say that the Blues are looking for a franchise talent top pair defenseman. Collectively, quote, we're getting tired of talking about the Blues blue line woes.
Same.
Oh, boy, are we ever. Between Colton Parayko, Justin Falk, Torrey Krug, and Nick Leddy, the Blues don't really have a top 4 problem. They have a star power problem. None of the 4 can seriously be counted upon as a top pair threat on a playoff team, and it's hard to move up the ranks given that constraint. Getting a legitimate top pair defenseman with offensive ability to play with Parayko this season is a big priority, end quote. Again, that comes from The Athletic. I feel like Colton Parayko could be a top pair defenseman.
I think Edmonton would put Colton Parayko in their top pair in a heartbeat.
I think what you just saw from Florida, you can build around guys like Colton Parayko. I think
absolutely.
Their top pairing defensively was kind of Colton Parayko-ish in terms of the quality of those guys. They just had a bunch of them.
Aaron Ekblad plays like Colton Parayko does.
The Blues have one of them right now.
Yeah.
So I do agree with this assessment. I think overall they're totally right. My question, though, is what they said at the end. Getting a legitimate top pair defenseman with offensive ability to play with Parayko this season is a big priority.
Cool.
Alex, I feel like we've gone back and forth on this, on what you want next to Colton Parayko. At one point it was, hey, maybe Torrey Krug, maybe Scott Perunovich. And then it became, ooh, Nick Leddy. Oh, what if we did something? What do you want next to Colton Parayko? Like in an ideal scenario, non-Adam Fox or
Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar.
Yeah, you can't have those guys. But in a realistic world, what kind of a player are you looking to acquire to put with Colton Parayko?
Jacob Chychrun. I mean, Jacob Chychrun-esque. That's an offensive-minded defenseman who can drive plays, and bigger body that plays defense that's 25 years old. Like, that's what you're looking for. Shea Theodore is another one that it might be available this offseason and via trade. Like, you need a puck mover who can provide offense on the top pair. Because Parayko... So
basically Nick Leddy plus.
Yeah. I mean...
Like a better version of Nick.
Yeah, because I think Nick Leddy's best.
Bigger.
There's no offense with Nick Leddy, in my opinion. Like, he's fast and he can move the puck out of his own zone, but there's no offensive upside there. Like, it's Nick Leddy and Torrey Krug combined is what you're kind of looking for. Offensive-minded guy who can move the puck well. That's why I really like the idea of Jacob Chychrun, which I've liked for a couple of years now, because puck mover, Shut down defenseman. That's your 1-2 punch. Honestly, it's the polar opposite of what the Blues did with Jay Bouwmeester trade. They had the offensive defenseman. They needed the shutdown defenseman for Petro, and they traded for Jay Bouwmeester. So now you're on the flip side of this. That's why I think the Jacob Chychrun thing's so interesting, because he's around the same time frame that you're looking at all of these other core pieces, and you put him with Colton Parayko, and you're set for the next 6+ years.
Does it make you nervous that over the past 3 years he's a minus 45?
No, because look at the trash he's been on.
I know, but
Look at the goaltenders he's had where he's played.
I mean, last year, like, nobody else on the Ottawa Senators had a plus minus of worse than minus 17, and he was a minus 30.
Do you know who Jonas Korpisalo is?
No.
Yeah, that's why.
You want me to be honest?
Yeah,
No.
that's why. If you're putting Jacob Chychrun on the ice with Colton Parayko in front of Jordan Binnington, you're talking, and he was needed to be more than just an offensive-minded defenseman here in Ottawa. You were like you were what we've been asking Colton Parayko to be, everything. Sometimes these guys aren't that.
It's just going to take so much to get him.
I don't know if it will, though, because Ottawa needs to get rid of him. You're going to have to give something that you're not going to want, but this is why I always go back to Pavel Buchnevich. If you're not able to come to a contract decision...
Is he going to sign with Ottawa?
I don't know if he's going to sign. You got to accept the trade. Doesn't matter if you want to sign.
I mean, it does for Ottawa, though. If he doesn't accept a long-term extension, then he's...
I have a feeling, though, that a lot of teams always feel like we could get this guy to re-sign once we get him.
Ottawa feels that way.
Yeah, Ottawa.
I feel like that's one of the exceptions. I feel like Ottawa, Winnipeg, Edmonton, they're like, I don't know.
Ottawa seems like they've got a false sense of pride where it's like, we're going to be cup contenders in a couple of years. We'll sell them on this team.
I guess they just did try this with Olmark, didn't they?
Yeah, because they just acquired Olmark.
He's not signing a contract extension.
I guess they did this technically with DeBrincat, right?
Yeah.
They tried it with him, too. I guess he had 2 years left.
Again, a lot of teams have false sense of pride where it's like, we just need to get him here and we'll show him what we're made of.
With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Better to forget
That's
coming
your
up
problem.
next year on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Your Comfort Service text line for Bet It or Forget It. You give us a scenario. We will tell you if we are betting it or forgetting it here on BK and Ferrario. Alex, let's start out with this one. Bet it or forget it. The Blues will either sign or trade for a top 6 forward by this time next week.
I'm going to say bet it. I think they dive into the offer sheet waters.
Do you?
Yeah, I really do. Doug just doesn't bring that up.
Well, he did, and I asked about it.
Well,
to be clear.
Still says it.
Yeah.
Still says it.
I asked about RFAs, though, and I was talking about trades.
Well,
and
but
he said, well, don't forget about offer sheets. And I was like, whoa.
And that's what I meant by that, though.
Oh, buddy.
That's what I meant by that. Like, you don't just bring up, well, don't forget about offer sheet. Like, I just think there are a lot of guys out there in that position that teams don't have the cap space that they can match the offer if the Blues throw it out there. And they've got the luxury of saying, like, hey, we've got the cap space now, and we'll sign you to a long-term deal.
And
so
they
I'm
don't have to hold on to it. Like, that's the other thing that I think really needs to be thought about here. Why are these so rare, right? Why is it so unlikely that teams go out there and make an offer sheet? Well, because your money's tied up. Mm-hmm. If the Blues, for example, spent $6.5 million on Martin H, they signed him to that offer sheet. Is it a week that the Carolina Hurricanes have to match that?
Yeah, I think so. It's either 5 days or a week.
It's a certain period of time where they have to match that. Well, if you're the Blues, while I have that offer sheet out there to Martin H, I can't allocate that money elsewhere. So if they go spend $6.5 million there, they have $8 million to do anything else. Mm-hmm.
And all of their guys are signed.
$14 million right now. They're going to have to make a couple of moves on the margins. But if you were a contender right now and you were trying to sign 2 legitimate pieces and you wanted like $5 million for they couldn't do that. Their money is tied up. Even if he ends up re-signing with Carolina 3-4 days down the road, now the free agency market is gone and it's too late for you. That's why teams don't do it, because they're scared of having their money tied up with a player that might not even end up signing with them once their team has the chance to negotiate.
This is just one of those scenarios, too, that it's an ideal situation to be in because of all of these younger players available. You don't get these younger players available to you at 23, 24, 25 years old. Typically, it's 27, 28, 29, which is why I do believe it's going to happen.
I'm going to say I'm optimistic. I'm going to say I believe it as well. I don't know, man. I really waffle back and forth on this. I'll say like 55% believe it, but I'll lean that direction. T-Bone?
I will say believe it. I think they'll go out and add somebody to the top 6, especially if they don't believe Dvorsky could be potentially ready. I know they're saying all the right things. If we want to give him a shot in camp, probably not the year that you rely on. Was he 19-year-old to be your number 2 center? I'll say believe it. I say they are bet it. They'll bring in somebody that will take a top 6 role.
Yeah, I was going to go another one in this one. Bet it or forget it. The Blues make one trade this weekend.
I'll bet it. They'll trade at some point during the draft. Even if it's not player for player, they'll make a deal to move up or down the board. They've got 2 second-round picks, 2 third-round picks. They'll move around the board a little bit. You mentioned the other day you could see them trading up into the first round, like picking at 16 and then trading up again to get at the back half of the first round. I could see something like that. So I'll say bet it. I think they end up making at least one deal.
Yeah, I'll bet it because I think there's a chance it's either trade somewhere in the draft, whether that be first, 7th round, 6th round, whatever, or you make a trade for someone that can fit in that top 6 that we're talking about, or you trade like a Kevin Hayes or a Brandon Saad. So I think there's probably somewhere that they make a deal. Yep. So I'd bet it. Guys, bet it or forget it. It's funny we all went hockey here. The Blues will add a defenseman within the next week.
Forget it.
Within the next week is tough. If you would have said this offseason, I would have bet it. But this week, I'm going to say forget it. I think defensemen are to the point where teams have to – they got to plot everything else out. And for the Blues to acquire a defenseman, I think another team's going to have to get to the point where it's like, we've got to move X to get Y.
I think they're going to run it back.
That's kind of where I am.
I don't think you can run it back, man.
I think you're stuck.
What's the downside, though? Like, if you do run it back, what's the downside?
If you don't upgrade your offense, you can't run it back.
I think they will upgrade their offense. Because I mentioned, I think they're going to upgrade with their forward group. I think that's where they're going to upgrade. I think they're looking at it as, we have basically 2 full off seasons of trying to get this thing back on track. And I think next year is the year where it becomes palatable for other teams with 2 years remaining on their contracts to trade for one of Torrey Krug or Justin Falk. I don't think that's the case right now. I also think, if I'm not mistaken, Torrey Krug has less trade protection next offseason than he does right now. It'll be a 15-team no trade. So next year's when you could make that happen. Maybe they try to see the waivers thing, see if that works for Torrey Krug, but I just can't see another team taking on that deal. I can't see it. So I think they run it back with their defensemen this offseason, and hopefully it works out better this time around.
Deja vu.
Yep. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line for Bet It or Forget It. Better to forget it, guys. Another hockey one. Brandon Saad, not on the team come opening night of the season.
I'm forgetting this. Yeah, I'm going to forget it. I do think he'll get traded at the deadline, though. If the Blues are out of it, that's a second-round pick right there for Brandon Saad.
He's a great asset, dude.
And
another year of control.
His position's going to be taken by Snuggerud because typically post-trade deadline, you're about a month away from the college season ending, and that's going to be Snuggerud signing.
And that's an easy one. If the Blues wanted to, they could easily retain salary in that kind of a deal because there's only 1 year remaining, so it only ties up that retention slot for one season, and it becomes super easy for a contender to take on because now he's $2+ million for them. That's a really nice deal for a contender.
I will forget it as well. Though it is interesting because you mentioned a second-round pick. Like if you trade, let's say they do the offer sheet from Natchez, I think you lose a first, second, and third. So if I trade Booch, I can get my first back from somebody. And if I trade Saad, whether that be in the offseason or at the deadline,
second back.
Boom, I've got my second back.
Yep.
So essentially I basically traded Booch and Saad for Natchez.
And you try and make it look good.
And you got an extra $4 million in cap space.
And you try and make it look good with Booch, Natchez in your top 6. And if it doesn't, then by the trade deadline, there you go.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Better to forget it. The Panthers and Oilers will fail to make it back to the Stanley Cup next year.
I'll bet it.
I'll bet it. Tampa's the only one that did it to where, at least recently, with a three-peat in terms of getting to the Stanley Cup final. And the 1 year was the COVID year.
Yeah,
so and then it was the shortened season. So that's a lot different than playing 2 back-to-back 82-game schedules. So yeah, I don't see it happening.
Yeah. Agreed. Better to forget it. The 2025 Cardinals first baseman is Alec Burleson. We're all in agreement here, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That play he made the other day.
Forget it. Pete Alonso.
First base was impressive.
Pete Alonso. What was more impressive, that play at first base or Burleson backflipping when he caught the ball in the right field?
I'll go backflip.
Backflip was so much more. He even did the hair flip with it.
Watching the Savannah Bananas.
Yeah, he is.
I like Alec Burleson, man. He's a super likable guy, and he's been playing really well, which is more important this season.
Is he going to change his number once he has a more premier role? Because I'd like to go get a Burley jersey.
I think this is it, man.
I don't like that number, though.
Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll get into BK and Ferrario's Rewind. We'll tell you about what the Cardinals have in store for this evening. A tougher pitching matchup over the next couple of days. We'll get into that coming up at 1:45. But next, is it time to start talking about a Masyn Winn extension already? No, we'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Terry Henderson here. They Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. The Cardinals beat the Braves 4-3 yesterday. They're back in action tonight. 6:45 will be first pitch. Ronaldo Lopez will get the start for Atlanta, and Kyle Gibson will be on the mound for St. Louis. The Sports Update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, so is it time to start talking about a Masyn Winn contract extension? That's the article that Ben Fredrickson wrote earlier today.
The dude with the back problem already.
And the reason why is because the team they're facing is the team that gives every young player a contract extension. The Atlanta Braves, this is their playbook. They see a young guy come up to the big leagues. He has a little bit of success. It shows that it's not a fluke, which is the case so far for Masyn Winn. Nothing about this is fluky. He's just a really good hitter, and God, is he so much fun to watch in the field. So, do you consider an early contract extension with Masyn Winn? My answer would be yes. Do I consider that right now, though? No. I would want to see one more year because I've been fooled by a good season offensively from Dylan Carlson.
Like who?
I've been fooled by a good season offensively from Jordan Walker. We have seen guys come up to the big league level, have some success, and then that second season, the league adjusts to them. I'm confident that that won't be the case for Masyn Winn. I think he's just a really good player. But I don't know that yet. And if I'm wrong and it ends up being a little harder for him offensively next year, I don't want to give him a contract based on these offensive numbers and then end up having a different type of an offensive producer over the next 4, 5, 6 seasons. And I jumped the gun a little early and now I'm stuck. I think that the Atlanta Braves might be getting into that spot with a guy like Michael Harris, for example. He hasn't been the same offensive player last I checked this season compared to what they thought he could potentially be.
He's hurt right now, isn't he?
Correct. I'll have to look up what his offensive numbers are way down again this year. He's below 300 in terms of his on-base percentage. I don't want to have a situation like that. So I would wait one more season, Alex, before I give him any kind of a contract extension. He's definitely on that list. He would be at the top of my list of guys that I would be thinking about. But where are you at with him?
Yeah, I'm the same. I think before I can talk contract extension, I need to see consistency. I need to see multiple seasons of you doing the same thing because it is very easy for a player to just have a hot season or a hot streak. How do you adjust when the other teams adjust? And that's when I could start talking contract extensions. Once I see that you have the ability to continue to better yourself while the other team figures out what you're doing so well and they don't know how to solve you, that's when you get to contract extensions. Now, it's a slippery slope because when you do that, then of course now we're talking more money. But I would much rather pay more money for a guy that I've seen back-to-back seasons of consistency than I would pay a guy, save money, and get burnt 3 years from now because that was just a one-off. So yeah, next year would be the year that I look at him and say, what do you want?
Yeah, I wouldn't do it for two reasons. One, what you guys just said of let's see him repeat it before we have that conversation. I've really learned my lesson considering I would have given Walker a huge contract extension this offseason, and he's the face of the Memphis Redbirds. So I think that is a reason for it. And we've seen a lot of those guys kind of flame out that the Cardinals have given contract extensions to or that we've talked about in the past. The second reason for me, and I know BK disagrees with this, I'm just not sure Masyn Winn will ever outprice himself from the St. Louis Cardinals in arbitration.
Don't look at his wins above replacement.
I'm looking at it right now. He's not top 50. He's not top 60 in baseball.
It's not a real stat.
He's 70th in WAR, and his WAR is being dragged down by.
Are you looking on base? I'm sorry. Are you looking at Baseball Reference?
I'm looking at F4. I'm looking at F4. He's top.
Fangraphs for those that aren't familiar with the.
I just thought you cussed at him, which I wouldn't blame you for if you did that.
He's 70th in WAR.
F4, am I right, guys?
But the big reason for him, like his batted ball profile, like what drives his on base to drive his OPS is his batting average. Now, is he always going to be a 300 hitter? Maybe, but as we've seen across baseball still doesn't value those guys. Like, baseball doesn't value Luis Arraez for some reason. And he hits like 350 every single season. He lost his arbitration case with the Miami Marlins, and he's one of the best hitters in baseball.
Imagine that.
Like, I think there's a chance he could become a better bat to where he adds a little more pop to him. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if he can eventually develop into being a 15 home run guy. But until I really start to see that, I don't think he can ever outprice himself from the St. Louis Cardinals in the arbitration process. So I don't think there's a need to give him a contract extension.
I do agree with T-Bone there. Like, I don't think that's ever going to be a player that you look at and you say, I can't afford to pay this guy. I think he's always going to be a player that you can afford.
It's not like a Tyler O'Neill who could have put up an MVP caliber year that would have outpriced yourself.
This is why I asked, because by baseball references, wins above replacement, and this is why I think people get annoyed with it, because like there's such different values that are inputs that they can be wildly different depending on if you're looking on Fangraphs or Baseball Reference. Every team does these individually. But it just, if you look at the Baseball Reference wins above replacement statistic, he is 22nd in Major League Baseball so far this year.
F4, right, T-Bone?
Air 5.
A brief list of some of the guys that he's in front of, just as an example: Alec Boehm, Jose Altuve, Willie Adames, Yordan Alvarez, like Vlad Guerrero Jr., Corey Seager, Kyle Schwarber, like some really good players that he's ahead of. And the reason why I bring that up is because that sometimes is what arbitrations can be won or lost based on. And that's the type of number that Luis Arraez does not typically rate well in, because he has no defensive value whatsoever. The difference between Winn and a guy like Arraez is a pure first baseman, basically, first/second, and he doesn't have any defensive value. Masyn Winn has big-time defensive value for you, so it's going to rate a lot better in those kinds of systems. And again, the reason I bring that up is because that's how you get paid in Major League Baseball, through the ARB system. I would start considering this after next season if he continues to put up these kinds of numbers. But it would necessitate him putting up those kinds of numbers. I do have another player that I would be legitimately interested in talking to very soon, like probably at the end of this year.
Lance Lynn?
No.
Gorman?
Nope.
Donovan?
Michael Ciani?
Brendan Donovan is the guy that I would be talking to. Next year will be his first year of arbitration. He's got 3 seasons of arbitration available to him. He is 27 years old right now, so it's stage 28, 29, and 30 seasons that are in ARB. I would just add a couple of club options to that.
What, 5-year deal?
Yeah, kind of similar to what Paul DeYoung's deal was, or Colton Wong's deal was with the Cardinals. It doesn't have to be a ton of money, but just cost certainty for the Cardinals, gives a player guaranteed money instead of having to go through the arbitration system. I think we've now seen Brendan Donovan become the voice of the Cardinals. I think that dude is your leader. I don't know if you guys saw Rob Rain's story yesterday, but he wrote about something really cool that the Cardinals are doing this year for all of the players that come up to the big leagues and make their major league debut. Brendan Donovan said him and Nolan Gorman were kind of the spearheading this. They said that they basically got nothing when they came up, and one of them had like a picture and the other one had ball that was signed. That was it.
Jack.
So
yeah, it's a Jack.
They said Donovan was talking about this with Rob Rains, and he was saying it's a really good piece. Go check it out on his website, or check his Twitter and you'll see the link to it. Donovan told him, like, I think that there should be more that is done, because this is an unbelievable accomplishment, and it's so difficult to reach the big leagues, much less to have success when you get to the big leagues. So he said, I was thinking about what to do, and I drove by, and I saw a liquor store, and I walked in, and we got an ace. We saw there was champagne. He's like, oh, that's perfect. So that's the kind of thing that would be cool. And it's this beautiful bottle. It's called the Ace of Spades, like a $300 bottle of champagne. It's gold-plated. And so he went to one of the team equipment guys. He's like, could we get this inscribed? When guys come up to the big leagues, could we get something inscribed that says, like, you know, Ryan Fernandez, when he comes up to the big leagues,
Jose Fermin, welcome back.
Makes his major league debut. They have that engraved for him. The entire team signs it, and then that's something he has as a memory from that day that he made his major league debut. It's a small thing, but, dude, that's the kind of stuff that goes a long way with your teammates. So Brendan Donovan, between that kind of stuff off of the field and his on-field accomplishments and his ability to play anywhere, just plug in that role, that's the guy I'm signing long-term.
Can I read you a comment on your WAR conversation? You guys can shove those numbers where the sun doesn't shine. Are they winners? That's how they get paid.
Like wins above replacement?
F4.
Well, that texter, I guess, didn't understand what WAR stood for.
Nothing.
You know, winning.
It's not good for anything.
Yeah. I still wouldn't give Brendan Donovan a contract extension. Another guy I just don't think really scares me of being outpriced in the ARB system. I just play out the arbitration.
Unless I got a dude who's going to be putting up like 35 plus home runs and looking at like a 140 plus OPS, I don't know if
but
that
if I told you it could be like a 5-year deal worth $60 million.
Nah.
It doesn't scare me.
I'm good.
$12 million, I can handle that.
I know, but I'm saying, like, you don't have to worry about him getting to free agency now.
I'll just figure that out when I get there.
I'm not worried about free agency with Brendan Donovan. And frankly,
I just want him around. I want him to be around the team. I don't want him worrying about his contract. I don't want to go through the ARB system with him. Like, I just want to be done. I just want to have that guy locked in as an everyday player for me for the next 5 years. I know that dude's going to be here. And so for me, if I'm in John Mozeliak's shoes, and obviously I'm not, and I don't know if Mo's going to be in those shoes much longer either. Not because he's going to get fired, but because he's going to eventually walk away. That would be my top priority. If you're not doing it with him, I don't think there's anybody on the team that's worthy of a potential extension right now. Because Walker, let's put that on the back burner now.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to have those conversations.
Well, 10 by 100, obviously.
But yeah, that story that I read the other day from Rob Raines, I think that's such a cool thing.
I'm actually shocked that there wasn't a Cardinal that wouldn't do more than just a baseball.
Hey, we all love Adam Wainwright. I'm shocked he wasn't.
But that
doing
was for
something.
the position players, right?
It's for everybody.
Oh wow, that's
everybody
really
on the team. Like they when they come up, Brendan Donovan and it was Donovan. Gorman, I want to make sure I give the credit. Burleson, I think, came up with this as well. And there's one other guy.
Masyn Winn's
Zach Thompson, because he said there was really nothing done whenever he came up as well.
All those guys.
Zach Thompson totally got one inscribed for himself, right? He's like, I'm gonna buy the champagne, and I need you to describe it.
It should be a special thing, man.
And it's weird that thinking of when all those guys got called up, every one of those guys that you said were called up in 2022.
Yep.
Well, I thought that had a good leadership core. Like, I thought that was Yachty. Now, he may have been
Imagine
in
if
Puerto
the
Rico
young
when some
guys
of them were
took
called
over
up.
this clubhouse, guys. Imagine the terrible things that would happen inside.
Well, Jack
that
Flaherty
clubhouse.
told me, and Nolan Arenado told me that was a
Oh
problem.
my God, Arenado was the guy that signed the baseball for him, wasn't he?
No, he took a
I
picture.
don't think it was a signed baseball. I think it was a baseball from that game.
He had a.
I'm serious.
He had a picture of Arenado had a picture of his own profile, and he was handing it out like celebrities that were trying to get talent jobs.
Here,
Like,
I'll give
hey,
you-
here you go. It's a picture of me. Take that home.
I signed my rookie card for you. If you want a
one of
ball, you
them
got to pay
got
for
it.
it at Cardinals Care.
One of them just took a picture with their family, and the other got a ball from that game.
If you want my autograph, show up to Cardinals Care, $25. Wait in line, scrub.
Coming up next, the Rewind here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. If you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
Oh, my God.
I wanted to see how long you panicked for.
No, you didn't. You weren't paying attention.
I was paying attention.
All right, going into tonight's game, Cardinals against the Braves. This is going to be a tough one, not going to lie to you. Reynaldo Lopez has been one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball. He went from reliever to ace overnight, seemingly.
Could have had him for waivers last year.
Now, he is slightly worse on the road with a 2.1 ERA.
Oh, yeah.
Lefties are slightly better against him than righties. It ain't by much, though. Righties basically never get on. They have a 225 on-base percentage. Lefties get on a little bit more, but neither of them slug against him, so that's the primary difference here. Alex, it's got to be about the pitching tonight, and Kyle Gibson is on the mound. He's certainly well rested at this point. How you feeling about the Cardinals going into tonight's game?
I'm not worried about the pitching on the Cardinal side. Like, that's the one area that has gotten me a lot more confident over these last few weeks. The offense is going to be the one I'm very interested in, because going up against this quality of pitcher, it's how I always seem to judge this Cardinals team is, what do you look like against some of the top pitchers? Because that's what you got to go up there. And they've done their jobs this season. They've gone and hit well against these types of pitchers. But this one to me, we talked about at the beginning of the show. You're going up against another team that's right there with you at the top of the wild card. Now's your chance to shine. I'll put the conductor hat on.
Just a quick pass along. If you're going to play the lineup game here in like 3 minutes, you may want to wait. But this is something that is interesting, and it's something that's going to be something we can talk about tomorrow. Nolan Arenado moved down in the lineup. He is returning to the lineup and will hit 6th behind Brendan Donovan.
I'm telling you, man, it's coming. They're going to have to make a decision.
Now,
I know people are like, you got to
3rd.
respect him. You got to respect
Or 4th.
Well, he's been hitting lately.
Yeah.
We talked about it. Since Mother's Day, he's got like an 800 OPS.
Yeah, other than when there's runners in scoring position.
Fair.
Then he doesn't hit.
Got to get better there. But this is a good decision. Good on Ollie. Appreciate that about him. He's Alex's
Arenado's the one that said it. He said, move me down.
Cardinals win
No, he
3-1
didn't.
tonight. Enjoy the game. Fastlane coming up next here on 101 ESPN.